My own wife said, "You're a worthless mistake of my past. Get out and never come back." 5 years later, security called, "Sir, someone who claimed to be your wife is at the gate of your estate." I smiled and said, "The intercom crackled at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that felt like any other Tuesday, which is to say, it felt like peace. I was in my study, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the valley, watching the sun bleed orange across the horizon. There's something about watching the day die from this height that makes you feel both small and infinite at the same time. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have understood that. 5 years ago, I was still learning what it meant to breathe without apologizing for the space I took up. Marcus, my head of security, spoke through the intercom with that particular tone he reserves for situations he finds complicated. "Sir, we have a visitor at the main gate." I didn't look away from the sunset. The sky was doing that thing where it can't decide between pink and gold, so it becomes both, becomes everything. "I'm not expecting anyone." "I'm aware, sir." A pause. The kind of pause that has weight. "The visitor claims to be your wife." The word hit the air and hung there, suspended like dust in light. Wife. A word I hadn't heard applied to myself in 5 years, 3 months, and I glanced at my watch, 16 days. Not that I was counting. You don't count the days after an amputation. You just learn to walk differently. I set down my glass of whiskey. Macallan, 25. The expensive kind that used to feel like a dream and now just feels like Tuesday. "I don't have a wife, Marcus." "Yes, sir. That's what I thought. But she's quite insistent. She says her name is Rebecca Chen Morrison." Rebecca. The name tasted like copper in my mouth, like blood from a bitten cheek. Rebecca, who had perfected the art of saying "I love you" and "you're nothing" in the same breath. Rebecca, who could smile at me across the dinner table while her eyes calculated my net worth down to the penny. Rebecca, who stood in the doorway of our apartment, her apartment, as she reminded me 5 years ago and said the words that still sometimes wake me at 3 a.m. "You're a worthless mistake of my past. Get out and never come back." I remember how the rain sounded that night. Like applause. Like the universe was congratulating her on finally saying what we both knew she'd been thinking since the business failed, since the creditors started calling, since I became the kind of liability that looks bad at charity galas. "Sir?" Marcus was waiting. I stood up, walked to the window, pressed my palm against the glass. Cool, solid, real. This house, this estate, this life was real. I'd built it from wire and code in 18-hour days, and the kind of desperation that either kills you or makes you unstoppable. I'd chosen the latter, though there were nights I wasn't sure I'd made the right choice. "What does she want?" "She didn't say, sir. She's asking to speak with you. She seems distressed." Distressed. The word was almost funny. I wondered what distress looked like on Rebecca now. Was it the same distress she performed when the bank froze our accounts? The same distress she wore like couture when she told her parents I was an embarrassment? Or was this something new, something authentic, something that actually reached her eyes? "Sir, how would you like me to proceed?" That's the question, isn't it? How do you proceed when your past shows up at your gate asking for an audience? Do you slam the door? Do you let the ghosts in? Do you pretend you don't remember the way she used to trace patterns on your chest in the morning before the world demanded things from both of you? I smiled. It was the kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes because it's too busy reaching something deeper, something sharper. The kind of smile that understands irony in its purest form. Tell her to wait. "Sir, I'll be down in 20 minutes. Have her wait at the gate." I could hear Marcus's surprise in the silence. He'd been with me for 3 years, had seen me build this empire from foundation to rooftop, had watched me turn revenge into architecture. He knew the story, not all of it, but enough. Enough to know that this moment was significant. "Understood, sir. Should I offer her any refreshment?" "No." I paused, looking at my reflection in the darkening window. I barely recognized the man staring back. Tailored suit, confident posture. Eyes that had learned to look at the world directly, instead of through the filter of someone else's disappointment. Actually, yes. Offer her water, just water, in a paper cup. There was the briefest pause. Of course, sir. I clicked off the intercom and stood there, breathing. You think you're ready for moments like this? You rehearse them in your head during long flights, in the shower, in the spaces between sleep and waking. You imagine what you'll say, how you'll stand, whether you'll let them see that they once had the power to unmake you, but you're never ready. Not really. I took my time. That's what power is, really the ability to make someone wait. 5 years ago, I waited for Rebecca everywhere. Waited for her to come home from work drinks that turned into midnight returns. Waited for her to notice the dinner I'd made, the effort I'd put in, the ways I was trying to hold us together with duct tape and optimism. Waited for her love to return, like waiting for a train that was never coming. Now, she could wait for me. I showered, changed into a fresh shirt, nothing too formal, nothing that suggested I'd prepared for this. Navy blue, open collar, the kind of casual that costs more than I used to make in a month. I ran my hand through my hair, looking at myself in the mirror. Who are you? I asked my reflection. The man in the mirror didn't answer. He just looked back with eyes that had learned to lie convincingly. Eyes that could hide the fact that seeing her name on the security screen had made his hands shake for exactly 4 seconds before training kicked in. I grabbed my phone. 3 missed calls from my COO about the merger. 2 texts from my sister asking if I was coming to dinner on Sunday. 1 notification from my meditation app reminding me to breathe. I was breathing. In, out, like counting, like measuring, like proving to myself that I was still here, still solid, still the man who'd built an empire out of spite and skill in equal measure. 20 minutes. I'd said 20 minutes. I checked my watch. 19 minutes and 30 seconds had passed. Perfect. The golf cart ride from the main house to the front gate takes exactly 7 minutes if you drive it properly. I drove it slowly. The estate sprawls across 40 acres of prime real estate, the kind of land that Rebecca's father once joked I could never afford even if I saved for 3 lifetimes. He was right, technically. The old me couldn't have afforded the grass, let alone the land beneath it. But the new me? The new me had turned a failing tech company into a cybersecurity empire. The new me had taken every door slammed in his face and used it as motivation to build his own doors, his own house, his own entire goddamn architectural legacy. The evening air was cool. October in Northern California means the kind of weather that can't decide if it's summer or fall, so it hedges its bets warm in the sun, cold in the shade. The trees I'd planted 3 years ago were finally tall enough to provide that shade, their leaves turning colors that reminded me of Rebecca's hair in certain light. I hated that. I still remembered that. The gate came into view. Wrought iron, 15 feet tall, with security cameras embedded in stone pillars that looked classical, but housed technology that could run facial recognition in 0.3 seconds. Marcus was standing at his post in the guardhouse, and through the bars of the gate, I could see her. Rebecca. Time is supposed to change people, supposed to soften them or harden them or fundamentally alter the composition of who they are. But Rebecca looked exactly the same. Same dark hair, same posture that suggested she was perpetually waiting for someone to take her photograph. She was wearing a dress I didn't recognize, cream-colored, expensive but not ostentatious. The kind of thing you wear when you want to look like you're not trying, while trying very hard. Our eyes met through the bars, and for a moment, I was 26 again. Seeing her for the first time at that coffee shop, where I'd spilled espresso on her laptop and spent the next 20 minutes apologizing while she laughed. She'd had the kind of laugh that made you want to be funnier, better, more interesting. The kind of laugh that stopped, eventually, when you failed to provide returns on investment. I stopped the golf cart. Didn't get out. Just sat there, one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting casually on my knee. "Hi," she said. 1 word, 2 letters, a lifetime of subtext. I didn't respond immediately. Let the silence stretch. Watched her shift her weight from one foot to the other, a tell she'd always had when she was nervous. I'd cataloged all her tells during our marriage, had studied them like scripture, trying to predict her moods, her needs, her imminent explosions. "Rebecca." I said her name like it was a fact, not a feeling. "You look," she started, then stopped. Her eyes took in the golf cart, the estate behind me, The casual confidence in my posture. You look good. Thank you. More silence. Marcus was watching from the guardhouse, his hand resting near the security panel. I'd trained him for moments like this. Not this specific moment you can't train for your ex-wife showing up unannounced, but for the kind of situation where things could escalate, where history could become present tense in dangerous ways. I know I shouldn't be here, Rebecca continued. She was using her soft voice, the one she deployed when she wanted something. I'd heard it 1,000 times. Can you cover the rent this month, baby? I know you're stressed, but can you just try to smile at dinner with my parents? Can you please try to be less? To you? Then why are you? I asked. The question landed between us like a stone in still water. Ripples, consequences. She flinched, actually flinched, and I realized with something like surprise that I'd never spoken to her this way before. When we were married, I'd wrapped every difficult question in cotton wool, had softened every confrontation until it was barely a conversation, more like a gentle suggestion that maybe, possibly, perhaps we could discuss this if it's not too much trouble. I needed to see you, she said. I needed to talk to you. About? About. She looked down. Her hands were twisting together. Another tell. About everything. About what happened. About us. There is no us, Rebecca. The words came out clean, surgical. There hasn't been an us for 5 years, 3 months, and 16 days. But who's counting? She looked up sharply. You remembered. Hard to forget the day your wife tells you you're worthless and kicks you out in the rain. She winced. Good. Let her wince. Let her feel 1,000th of what I felt standing on that sidewalk with 2 suitcases and a heart that didn't know how to beat without her permission. Daniel. Dr. Morrison. I corrected. I finished my doctorate, published 3 papers, built a company, did all the things you said I'd never accomplish because I was too soft, too unrealistic, too busy being a mistake. Each word was a scalpel. I watched them cut. I know, she whispered. I've followed your career, the company, the acquisition, the Forbes profile. I know what you've built. Then you know that whatever you came here for, I don't need it. I leaned back in the golf cart, the picture of ease. Inside, my heart was running marathons. I don't need closure. I don't need apologies. I don't need anything from you, Rebecca. I stopped needing things from you the moment you made it clear I was a liability. That's not fair. Fair. The word came out sharp enough to draw blood. You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about how I worked 2 jobs to support your graduate program while you complained I wasn't ambitious enough. Let's talk about how I believed you when you said you loved me, right up until the moment the money ran out. Let's talk about fair, Rebecca. I have time. I have all the time in the world now. She was crying. Real tears, not the performative kind she used to deploy at her parents' house when she needed them to see me as the villain. These tears were messier, more desperate. Please, she said. Please, Daniel. Can we talk? Can I explain? I looked at her through the bars of my gate, my property, my empire, and felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Nothing. Not hate, not love, not even satisfaction. Just nothing. She was a stranger who happened to know my favorite coffee order and the scar on my left shoulder from when I fell off my bike at 9 years old. She was a collection of memories that belonged to someone else, some softer version of me who died in the rain 5 years ago. I smiled. It was genuine this time. No, I said simply. What? No, we can't talk. You can't explain. This isn't a movie, Rebecca. You don't get to show up and deliver a monologue and earn forgiveness. You don't get access to my time, my space, my life. You gave that up when you told me to get out and never come back. Daniel, please. I'm following your instructions, I said. You told me to never come back. I didn't. I went forward instead. Built something you never thought I could build. Became someone you never believed I could become. And now you want back in? You want to what? Apologize? Explain? Ask for something? Her face confirmed it. There it was. The ask. Of course there was an ask. I'll make this easy for you. I continued. The answer is no. No to whatever you want. No to whatever you need. No to the conversation, the explanation, the tearful reunion. Just no. I started the golf cart. Daniel, wait. She pressed herself against the gate. My father, he's sick. He's dying. He wants to see you. He wants to apologize for how he treated you. Please. He doesn't have much time. I stopped. Let that sink in. Her father. The man who'd looked at me across Thanksgiving dinner and asked when I planned to stop playing at entrepreneurship and get a real job. The man who'd suggested kindly, of course, always so kindly, that maybe I wasn't the right fit for his daughter's future. No, I said again. Please, tell him I said thank you. What? I looked at her directly. Tell him thank you. For every dismissive comment, for every doubt, for every time he made me feel small. It made me want to be big. It made me want to prove everyone wrong. Tell him he was excellent motivation. You're cruel, she whispered. No, I said softly. I'm just done being kind to people who were never kind to me. There's a difference. I drove away, didn't look back, couldn't look back because if I did, I might see the version of myself that still wanted to comfort her, to fix her problems, to be the solution to everyone's everything while solving nothing of my own. Behind me, I heard her calling my name. I turned up the volume on the golf cart's radio and let the sound drown her out. Marcus would handle the rest. He'd give her water, paper cup, as requested, and then he'd politely but firmly escort her off the property. He'd file a report, add her to the no access list, make sure this couldn't happen again. By the time I reached the house, the sun had fully set. The valley was dark, dotted with lights from houses that looked like stars from this height. I stood on the terrace, breathing in the cool night air, and felt my phone buzz. A text from Marcus. She's gone, sir. Should I upgrade security protocols? I typed back, yes. And Marcus, thank you. Of course, sir. Are you all right? Was I all right? I looked out at the empire I'd built, the life I'd constructed from the rubble of the one that had exploded. I thought about Rebecca at my gate, crying, asking for things I would never give. I typed, I'm perfect. And the strange thing was, I almost meant it. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I couldn't. I'd learned to sleep anywhere, anytime. A skill acquired during the years when I worked around the clock to build something from nothing. I didn't sleep because I chose not to. Sometimes insomnia is a symptom. Sometimes it's a decision. I sat in my study with the lights off, watching the valley breathe beneath me. Cities at night look like living organisms, from high enough lights flickering like neurons firing, traffic moving like blood through veins. I'd bought this house because of this view, because sitting here made me feel like I was watching the world instead of drowning in it. My phone sat face down on the desk. I knew what would happen if I flipped it over. There would be messages. Rebecca had my number, of course she did. These things never really disappear. They just hibernate in contact lists, waiting for moments of desperation. She would have texted by now, maybe called, left voicemails that started with, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I didn't flip the phone. Instead, I poured another whiskey and let my mind do what it had been trying not to do since I heard her name on the intercom. Remember, memory is a strange thing. You think you control it, think you can file it away in boxes labeled processed and archived and no longer relevant. But memory doesn't respect your filing system. Memory is a cat that comes when it wants to, not when you call it. I remembered the day I met Rebecca's father for the first time. We'd been dating for 6 months, and she'd finally decided I was worthy of the introduction. He's going to love you, she'd said in the car, touching up her lipstick in the visor mirror. Just be yourself. Terrible advice, as it turned out. Richard Chen was old money, trying to look like new money. Vintage watches, bespoke suits, that particular confidence that comes from never having to check your bank account before buying something. He shook my hand in the foyer of their Palo Alto mansion, and I watched his eyes do the calculation. my off-the-rack blazer, my nervous smile, my complete inability to casually reference summer homes or ski chalets or whatever currency people like him traded in. "So," he'd said over dinner, cutting his steak with surgical precision, "Rebecca tells me you're in technology?" The way he said technology made it sound like I'd told him I collected bottle caps for a living. "Yes, sir. I'm developing security software for—" Sounds fascinating. The tone of voice, that means the opposite. "And this is something you do professionally, or is it more of a hobby situation?" Rebecca had touched my hand under the table. Warning or comfort? I wasn't sure. "It's my company, sir. Small right now, but we have some promising contracts in development." "Ah," he'd smiled. The kind of smile a shark gives before it realizes you're not worth eating. "A startup. How ambitious." That word, ambitious. He made it sound like a character flaw. I should have seen it then, should have recognized that if Rebecca's father saw me as a temporary inconvenience, Rebecca might too, eventually. But I was 26, and in love, and stupid enough to believe that love was the thing that mattered most. Spoiler alert, in the Chen family, love ranked somewhere below net worth and above table manners, but not by much. The whiskey was gone. I didn't remember drinking it, but the glass was empty, so logic suggested I had. This is what they don't tell you about success. It doesn't erase the past. It just gives you better alcohol to drink while you remember it. My phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. I flipped it over. 7 missed calls, 12 text messages, all from the same number. A number I hadn't saved under a name because saving it would give it power, would make it real. I opened the messages. 11:47 p.m. "Daniel, please. I know you're angry. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. But please just read this. 11:52 p.m. My father really is dying. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The doctors give him weeks. Maybe. He talks about you. About how wrong he was. About how he drove you away. Drive. 12:03 a.m. I know you think I'm lying. I know you think this is manipulation. I have the medical records. I can send them to you. 12:15 a.m. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm just asking you to think about it. 12:23 a.m. Please. 12:31 a.m. I know what I did to you. I know what I said. I live with it every day. 12:44 a.m. You were right. About everything. I was cruel. I was wrong. You deserved better. 12:58 a.m. I don't expect you to care, but I needed you to know. He's sorry. I'm sorry. 1:15 a.m. I'll leave you alone now. I'm sorry I came to your gate. I'm sorry I disrupted your life. I'm sorry for all of it. 1:47 a.m. I hope you're happy. I really do. You deserve to be happy. 2:33 a.m. Goodbye, Daniel. I read them twice, then a third time, looking for the angle, the manipulation, the ask hidden inside the apology, because people like Rebecca don't apologize without wanting something. People like her father don't express regret unless there's an endgame. But if there was an angle, I couldn't find it. I typed out a response. I don't care. Deleted it. Typed, too little, too late. Deleted it. Typed, I hope he suffers. Deleted it because even thinking it made me feel like the person she'd accused me of being, small, petty, incapable of rising above. Finally, I typed nothing, put the phone down, walked to the window. The thing about revenge is that it's supposed to feel good. You spend years imagining the moment when the people who hurt you realize what they lost, what they threw away. You script it perfectly. Their regret, your indifference, the cosmic justice of watching them beg for crumbs from the table you built. But standing there at 2:47 a.m., looking at my reflection in the window of my study in my mansion on my estate. I didn't feel good. I felt tired. Morning came anyway. It always does, indifferent to whether you've slept or processed your emotions or figured out who you're supposed to be in the story of your own life. I went through my routine mechanically. Shower, coffee, checking the markets while the news played in the background. The merger with Tech Defend was proceeding smoothly. Stock prices were up. My CFO had sent an email at 6 a.m. The woman never slept, confirming that we'd closed the deal with the Department of Defense. $18 million. The kind of contract that would have made 26-year-old me weep with joy. 31-year-old me just forwarded it to my accountant. My assistant, Jennifer, called at 8:15 a.m. Morning, Dr. Morrison. You have a 10 a.m. with the board, lunch with Senator Williams at noon, and the Forbes interview at 3 p.m. Also, you asked me to remind you about your sister's birthday dinner on Sunday. Thank you, Jen. Can you push the Forbes interview to next week? Tell them something came up. A pause. Jennifer had worked for me for 2 years and had learned to read the spaces between my words. Is everything all right? Fine. Just need to handle something personal. Of course. I'll reschedule. Should I clear anything else from your calendar? I thought about it. What was I planning to do? Drive to a hospital and stand awkwardly at the bedside of a man who'd spent years making me feel insufficient? Have a conversation with my ex-wife about feelings and regrets and all the things that couldn't be fixed by money or success or time? No, I said. Keep everything else as is. Understood. Oh, and Dr. Morrison? Marcus sent me the security report from last night. He wanted to know if you needed anything. Of course he did. Marcus was thorough. The security report would detail Rebecca's arrival time, departure time, the make and model of her car, probably her emotional state rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Tell Marcus everything is fine. The additional protocols are sufficient. Will do. See you at the office. I hung up and stared at my coffee. It was good coffee, Ethiopian single origin, hand-roasted by a company in Oakland that charged $28 for 8 ounces. The kind of coffee that used to be a fantasy, and now was just coffee. Everything was just now. Just coffee, just a house, just a fortune, just a life built on the bones of the one that broke. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Then something, curiosity, masochism, fate, made me swipe to accept. Hello, Daniel? A man's voice. Weak, rattling, like wind through broken shutters. Daniel Morrison? I knew who it was before he said his name. You don't forget the voice of the man who once told you that you'd never amount to anything worth his daughter's time. Richard, not a question, a statement. Thank God. I wasn't sure you'd answer. Rebecca said you. She said you turned her away last night. I did. A long breath. It sounded painful. I don't blame you. I wouldn't answer either if I were you. Silence stretched between us. I could hear machines beeping in the background. Hospital sounds. Death sounds. Why are you calling? I asked. Because I'm dying, he said simply. And when you're dying, you realize how much time you wasted being wrong about things. About people. That sounds like a personal problem. He laughed. It turned into a cough that sounded like it hurt. Christ, you've gotten hard. Good. You needed to be harder. I was wrong about that too. Was there a point to this call, Richard? Or did you just want to catalog your mistakes before you go? Both, maybe. Another painful breath. I wanted to tell you I was sorry for how I treated you, for what I said, for making Rebecca think that success was measured in stock portfolios and country club memberships instead of character. Bit late for parenting advice. Yes, it is. But better late than never. Isn't that what they say? They say a lot of things. Doesn't make them true. More silence. I could picture him in a hospital bed, machines keeping him alive, surrounded by the kind of medical care that money buys. I wondered if he was alone, or if Rebecca was there, coaching him on what to say, how to manipulate the situation. I read about your company, Richard said. The acquisition, the government contracts. You built something real, Daniel. Something solid. I was wrong about you. Wrong about everything. You were wrong about me because you never bothered to be right about me, I said. You looked at my bank account instead of my work ethic. You measured me in dollars instead of dedication. And when the business failed, when things got hard, you convinced your daughter that I was the problem instead of the economy, the timing, the 1,000 variables that go into success or failure. You're right. I know I'm right. I've had 5 years to be right. Daniel, please. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything except for you to listen. Can you do that? Can you give a dying man 5 minutes? I looked at the clock. 8:47 a.m. The board meeting was in an hour and 13 minutes. I had time. 3 minutes, I said. Fair enough. He paused, gathering strength or thoughts, or both. When Rebecca brought you home that first time, I saw something in you that scared me. You reminded me of myself at your age, ambitious, idealistic, convinced that hard work and innovation would be enough. But I'd learned, over years, that it's not enough. That the world doesn't care about your ideas if you can't monetize them. So I tried to warn Rebecca, tried to protect her from what I thought would be inevitable disappointment. By treating me like I was worthless? By treating you like you were a risk. And I was right, wasn't I? Your company did fail. You did lose everything. The words should have stung. Once upon a time, they would have eviscerated me. But now, they just sat there, inert, powerless. Yes, I said, I failed. I lost everything, including your daughter. But then you didn't stay lost, Richard continued. You got back up, built something bigger, became someone stronger. And that's what I didn't understand about you, Daniel. I didn't understand that some people break and rebuild themselves better than they were before. I thought you were the kind who would just stay broken. Your faith in me is touching. I'm trying to apologize. You're trying to feel better about dying. I corrected. There's a difference. You want absolution. You want to shuffle off this mortal coil thinking that everything's been resolved, that we've had our moment of reconciliation, that I've forgiven you, so you can face whatever comes next with a clean conscience. Maybe, he admitted. Is that so wrong? It's not about wrong or right. It's about the fact that your peace of mind is not my responsibility. It never was. You spent years making me feel like I owed you something, owed you success, owed you validation, owed you proof that I was good enough for Rebecca. I don't owe you my forgiveness too. No, he said quietly. You don't? Then why are we having this conversation? Because I wanted you to know that I see you now. I see what you built. I see who you became. And I'm proud of you, Daniel. I know I have no right to be proud, but I am. The words landed like birds on a wire, unexpected, fragile, ready to fly away at any moment. Your time's up, I said. Daniel. Daniel spied I am so. Goodbye, Richard. I hung up, sat there, breathed. My coffee had gone cold. I drank it anyway, punishing myself with the bitter taste, the wrong temperature. This was fine. This was closure. This was me being strong and standing my ground and not letting the past manipulate the present. So why did it feel like I just kicked a dying man while he was down? The board meeting was a blur. Revenue projections, expansion strategies, the usual corporate theater. I performed my role perfectly confident CEO, visionary leader, man who had it all together. No one could tell that I'd spent the morning on the phone with the father of my ex-wife, listening to a dying man apologize for things that couldn't be unapologized for. During lunch with Senator Williams, I smiled and nodded and discussed cybersecurity legislation while my mind replayed Richard's voice. I'm proud of you, Daniel. 4 words I'd wanted to hear for so long they'd become mythical, and now that I'd heard them, they felt hollow. Or maybe I felt hollow. Maybe success had carved me out so thoroughly that there was nothing left to fill with other people's approval. Dr. Morrison? The senator was looking at me expectantly. Your thoughts on the proposed regulations? I hadn't heard the question, hadn't been listening. I was too busy wondering if dying people told the truth or just told you what you wanted to hear so they could die believing they'd fixed something. I think, I said slowly, that we need to be very careful about the difference between security and surveillance. One protects people, the other controls them. The senator nodded, apparently satisfied with my vague philosophical answer. I made it through lunch, made it back to the office, made it to my desk, where I sat and stared at my computer screen and tried to remember why any of this mattered. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it. A photo. Richard Chen in a hospital bed, looking exactly as I'd imagined, pale, thin, surrounded by machines. But he was smiling. And next to him, holding his hand, was Rebecca. Below the photo, a message. Thank you for answering his call. It meant everything to him. This is the happiest I've seen him in weeks. Rebecca. I stared at the photo for a long time, looking at Richard's smile, at Rebecca's hand on his, at the evidence that my 3-minute conversation had somehow mattered to someone, had somehow made a difference in the space between life and death. I should have felt good about that. I should have felt like I'd done something decent, something human. Instead, I just felt manipulated. Because that's what the photo was, wasn't it? Evidence, proof, a hook to reel me back in. Look how happy you made him. Look how much your forgiveness matters. Don't you want to do more? I deleted the message, blocked the number, and tried very hard not to think about the fact that I'd just cut off a dying man's daughter. That evening, I drove. Not to anywhere specific, just drove. Up the coast, windows down, music loud enough to drown out thought. The Pacific Ocean stretched infinite to my left, dark and churning under the evening sky. I'd always loved the ocean for its honesty. It didn't pretend to be anything other than what it was. Powerful, indifferent, capable of drowning you without malice or mercy. I pulled over at a beach I didn't know, walked down to the water, let the waves swallow my expensive shoes. A text from my sister. Excited for Sunday. I'm making your favorite. Don't be late or I'll tell Mom you're avoiding her calls. A text from Jennifer. Forbes wants to reschedule for Monday. Works for you? A text from Marcus. Sir, just checking in. All quiet on the property. No texts from blocked numbers. No messages from ghosts. Just the ocean and the sand and the slow realization that I'd spent 5 years building walls so high that I'd forgotten what it felt like to let someone through. I typed a message to the blocked number. What do you really want, Rebecca? Stared at it for 5 minutes. Deleted it. Drove home to my mansion with its perfect view and its expensive furniture and its absolute crushing silence. Sunday came, wrapped in fog, the kind that makes Northern California look like a dream someone's having but can't quite remember. I stood in my closet, a room larger than the entire apartment Rebecca and I used to share, trying to decide what you wear to your sister's house when you're avoiding talking about the fact that your ex-wife showed up at your gate and you sent her away. Casual, I decided. Jeans, a sweater, the kind of outfit that says, I'm fine, everything's fine. Please don't ask me if I'm fine. My sister, Maya, lived in Berkeley in a craftsman house she'd bought with her husband 10 years ago. It was the kind of house that had character creaky floors, built-in bookshelves, a garden where things actually grew. Not like my estate, which was beautiful, but sterile, more museum than home. I'd been avoiding her calls all week. Maya had a sixth sense for when I was spiraling, had inherited our mother's ability to extract confessions with nothing more than a look and a strategically placed silence. She was going to know something was wrong the moment I walked through her door. I drove the Tesla, not the Porsche. The Porsche made a statement. The Tesla was just transportation. This was the kind of calculation my life had become: which car sends which message, which watch implies what level of success, which version of myself to perform for which audience. Sometimes I missed being broke. At least then, I only had one self. Maya opened the door before I could knock, took one look at my face, and said, "What happened? Hello to you too." "Don't." She pulled me into a hug that smelled like garlic and wine, and the sandalwood incense she burned, even though her husband complained it made the house smell like a yoga studio. You have that look. What? Look? The look you had after the divorce. The one that says you're fine, but you're actually calculating the most efficient way to implode. I'm not going to implode. End quote. Uh-huh. She stepped back, studied me with the intensity of someone who'd known me for all 31 years of my life. Come in. Tom's in the kitchen pretending he knows how to make risotto. You can help him not burn it while I interrogate you. The house was warm. That was the first thing that hit me, actual warmth, not the climate-controlled perfection of my estate. There was music playing, something jazzy and old. Photos on the walls of Maya and Tom at their wedding, at various beaches, at my dissertation defense, where I looked younger and more hopeful than I remembered feeling. Tom was indeed struggling with risotto, stirring it with the concentration of a man diffusing a bomb. Daniel, thank God. Maya's been hovering, and it's making me nervous. I'm not hovering. I'm supervising, Maya called from behind me. There's a difference? A crucial one. I took over the risotto while Tom gratefully retreated to set the table. Maya poured 3 glasses of wine, a Pinot Noir that probably cost more than I used to spend on groceries in a month, and handed me one. So, she said, leaning against the counter, talk. About what? About whatever's making you look like you've seen a ghost. I stirred the risotto, watching the rice slowly absorb the broth, transforming itself grain by grain. Rebecca showed up at my gate on Tuesday. Maya's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. What? Yeah, Rebecca. Your ex-wife, Rebecca. The one who kicked you out and told you to never come back, Rebecca. That's the one! Jesus Christ. She set down her wine. What did she want? Her father's dying. Pancreatic cancer. He wanted to apologize. She wanted. I don't know what she wanted. What did you do? I told her no. Sent her away. Then he called me on Wednesday. Richard. We talked for 3 minutes. He apologized. Said he was proud of me. I hung up on him. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then, how do you feel? I feel like I'm supposed to feel good about it. I got what I wanted, right? They came crawling back. They realized they were wrong. I got to turn them away. It should feel like victory, but it doesn't. But it doesn't. I added more broth to the risotto, watched it bubble and steam. It feels like I kicked a dying man. It feels like I'm still letting them control my emotions 5 years later. It feels like no matter what I do, they win. They don't win, Danny. Maya only called me Danny when she was being serious, using the name from childhood to remind me who I was before I became Dr. Morrison, CEO, Forbes, profile subject. You built an incredible life. You succeeded despite them. That's not them winning. Then why does it feel like I'm still playing their game? She didn't have an answer for that, just squeezed my shoulder and went to check on Tom's table-setting progress. Dinner was good. Maya had made her famous osso buco along with the risotto, and Tom told stories about his work as a public defender that were funny and depressing in equal measure. For an hour or two, I could almost forget the week I'd had. Could almost be the version of myself who showed up for family dinners and laughed at the right moments and didn't carry the weight of the past like stones in his pockets. But then dessert came tiramisu from the Italian place Maya loved, and she said, "So are you going to see him?" Who? Don't play dumb, Richard. Are you going to see him before he dies? I set down my fork. Why would I do that? Because you're going to regret it if you don't. I don't owe him anything, Maya. I didn't say you owed him. I said you'd regret it. How do you know what I'll regret? Because I know you. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, serious in the way that made her look like our mother. You're angry. You have every right to be angry. What they did to you was cruel and unfair, and you've earned the right to tell them both to go to hell. But you're not the kind of person who can live with leaving things ugly. You never have been. Even when we were kids and I'd steal your toys, you couldn't go to sleep until we'd made up. You'd knock on my door at like 2 a.m. with some elaborate apology for whatever you thought you'd done wrong. I was 7. You're still the same person, just taller and richer. Tom cleared his throat. For what it's worth, I think Maya's right. Not that my opinion matters, but I've seen a lot of people in my line of work who did or didn't do things and had to live with it after. The ones who didn't usually. They carry it differently. Carry what? The weight. Look, you can be justified and right and still end up with a burden you didn't expect. Sometimes, closure isn't about them. It's about you. I wanted to argue, wanted to explain that closure was a myth, that some things couldn't be closed, that the wound Rebecca and her father had opened didn't seal just because they said sorry. But sitting there in Maya's warm kitchen with tiramisu melting on my plate and people who loved me looking at me with concern, I couldn't find the words. I don't know if I can face them, I said finally. I don't know if I'm strong enough. Danny. Maya reached across the table, took my hand. You built a tech empire from nothing. You got a doctorate while working full-time. You survived having your heart broken by someone you thought would love you forever. You're strong enough for anything. What if I'm not? What if I walk in there and I'm 26 again? What if I see her and I remember why I loved her and it all falls apart? Then it falls apart. And then you build it back up again. That's what you do. We sat there in silence while Tom quietly cleared the plates, giving us space for whatever this moment was. I'm scared, I admitted. I'm scared that if I see them, if I let them back in even a little bit, they'll find a way to hurt me again. I'm scared that all of this, the house, the company, the success, is just armor I've built, and underneath, I'm still the guy standing in the rain with 2 suitcases, wondering what he did wrong. You are still that guy, Maya said, but you're also the guy who survived it. Both things are true, and maybe seeing them isn't about them. Maybe it's about proving to yourself that the armor isn't the only thing holding you together. I left Maya's house at 10 p.m. with a container of leftover osso buco and too many thoughts. The fog had lifted, leaving the night clear and cold. I sat in my car for a while, not starting the engine, just sitting. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I should have ignored it, should have learned by now that unknown numbers this week meant complications. But I opened it anyway. This is Rebecca. I know you blocked me. I'm using a friend's phone. I'm not trying to manipulate you. I just wanted you to know that my father passed away this afternoon at 4:37 p.m. He was peaceful. He was surrounded by family. His last words were about you. He said to tell you that you were right about everything, and he was sorry he never told you when it mattered. I won't contact you again. I'm sorry for disturbing your peace. Take care of yourself, Daniel. I read it 3 times, 4:37 p.m. while I was at Maya's house. Eating tiramisu, complaining about how hard it was to decide whether to see him. He died. The decision had been made for me. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt something I hadn't expected. Grief. Not for Richard Chen, the man who'd made me feel small, but for the possibility of, what? Resolution? Redemption? Some imagined scene where I walked into his hospital room and we had a moment of mutual understanding and I got to be the bigger person? All of that died at 4:37 p.m. while I was deciding it was too hard to face. I started the car, drove, ended up at the beach again, the same one from earlier in the week. It was becoming a habit, this ocean seeking, when emotions got too big for my expensive house with its expensive view. I called Maya. He died, I said when she answered. Oh, Danny. Degetted by Seddon, while I was at your place. While I was eating dessert and feeling sorry for myself. He died, and I wasn't there, and I didn't forgive him, and now I can't. You can still forgive him. He's dead, Maya. Forgiveness isn't for the dead, it's for the living. I watch the waves, dark and endless. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Feel this much. I spent 5 years building walls, building armor, becoming someone who couldn't be hurt. And now it's all crashing down because a man I hated died, and I'm sad about it. How does that make sense? It makes perfect sense. You're human. Humans are complicated. I don't want to be complicated. I want to be strong. Those aren't opposites, Danny. Her voice was gentle. Strong people feel things. They just don't let the feelings make their decisions for them. What if I made the wrong decision? Then you made the wrong decision. You'll make others. That's life. I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to my sister breathe 30 miles away, feeling less alone than I had all week. Rebecca said he was peaceful, I told her, that his last words were about me, an apology. That's something. Is it enough? I don't know. Is it? I didn't have an answer. Just watched the ocean and listened to Maya's breathing and tried to figure out if the ache in my chest was grief or guilt or just the remnants of a love I'd tried so hard to kill. I should go, I said finally. You going to be okay? Eventually. Call me if you need me. Anytime. I mean it. I know. Love you, Maya. Love you too, Danny. I hung up, sat there. The ocean kept doing what it does, crashing, receding, indifferent to human drama. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. The funeral is Wednesday at 2 p.m. Street Marks Episcopal in Palo Alto. I'm not asking you to come. I'm just telling you in case you want to. No pressure, no expectations. Just information. Rebecca, Wednesday. 3 days away. I could go, pay my respects, be the bigger person, show everyone that I was mature enough, successful enough, healed enough to stand in a church and mourn the man who'd never thought I was good enough for his daughter. Or I could not go. Send flowers, the expensive kind that say, I'm sorry for your loss, without actually requiring me to show up and feel things in public. I didn't decide. Not then. Just drove home to my museum of a house and poured a whiskey I didn't drink and stood at my window looking at the valley lights and wondering when success had started feeling so much like loneliness. Monday morning came with emails about the Forbes interview, questions about the merger, a reminder that I had a board meeting on Thursday. The world kept spinning. Business kept businessing. My CFO didn't know Richard Chen had died, didn't know my ex-wife was grieving, didn't care, because why should she? This was work. This was the empire. Personal pain didn't affect quarterly earnings. I went through the motions, answered emails, took calls, pretended to care about profit margins and market share. Jennifer noticed, of course. You seem distracted today. Just tired. Is this about the visitor from last week? Marcus mentioned. It's handled. She nodded, didn't push. Good assistant. Knew when to probe and when to retreat. At lunch, I sat in my office and Googled Richard Chen obituary. There it was, in the San Francisco Chronicle, a photo of him from 20 years ago, looking powerful and confident. The obituary listed his accomplishments: successful real estate developer, philanthropist, board member of 3 nonprofits, survived by his wife Margaret, daughter Rebecca, son David, whom I'd met exactly twice and who'd been equally dismissive of me. Mr. Chen was known for his sharp business acumen and his commitment to family values. The obituary read, he believed in hard work, integrity, and the importance of surrounding yourself with people who elevated your potential. I almost laughed. Family values. The man who'd convinced his daughter that love was less important than an investment portfolio. The man who'd told me I'd never be worthy of the Chen name. But then I kept reading. In his final weeks, Mr. Chen spoke often of regrets. He urged his family to value character over credentials, to measure people by their resilience rather than their resources. I got it wrong, he told his daughter. I thought money was the measure of a man. I was wrong. Rebecca had put that in the obituary, had made sure the world knew he'd changed his mind, had made sure I'd know. I closed my laptop, looked at my calendar. Wednesday at 2 p.m., I had nothing scheduled. Tuesday night, I stood in my closet again, this time looking at funeral-appropriate attire, black suit, navy tie. The kind of outfit that said, I'm here to pay respects, without saying anything about the complicated knot of emotions underneath. I hadn't decided if I was going. Not really. I just prepared. In case I decided. My phone rang. Maya, just checking in, she said. I'm fine. Are you going tomorrow? I don't know. Want me to come with you? The offer made my throat tight. You didn't even know him. No, but I know you. And I know funerals are hard, and ex-wives are harder. And doing both at once is basically asking for an emotional crisis. So, want backup? Maya. It's not a pity offer, Danny. It's a sister offer. I'll wear something appropriately somber, stand next to you, and give judgmental looks to anyone who tries to start drama. It's basically my superpower. I smiled despite everything. I'll think about it. Okay, but seriously, if you go, don't go alone. Take me, or take Marcus, or take that assistant of yours who seems competent. Don't walk into that alone. Why not? Because you've been alone enough. After she hung up, I sat there thinking about that. About being alone. About choosing to be alone versus having aloneness chosen for you. About the difference between solitude and isolation. I texted Maya, "If I go, I'm going alone. But thank you." She texted back, "Stubborn idiot. I love you anyway." I set 3 alarms for Wednesday. 11 a.m., noon, 1 p.m. If I slept through all 3, it was a sign I wasn't meant to go. If I didn't, well, I'd figure that out when it happened. I woke up before the first alarm. 6:23 a.m. The sky was that particular shade of gray that promised nothing, not rain, not sun, just existence. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, doing the mental calculus of someone who can't decide if they're brave or stupid. Go to the funeral, face Rebecca, face the Chen family, face every person who'd watched me fail and get discarded. Stand in a church and mourn a man who'd spent years making sure I knew I wasn't good enough. Be the bigger person. Be mature. Be healed. Don't go to the funeral. Send flowers. Maintain boundaries. Protect the peace I'd spent 5 years building. Stay in my fortress. Stay safe. Stay alone. Both options felt like losing. I got up, made coffee, watched the sunrise turn the gray sky into something that could almost pass for beautiful. My black suit hung on the bedroom door where I'd left it last night, a question mark made of wool and expensive tailoring. At 11 a.m., the first alarm went off. I was in my study, halfway through a spreadsheet. I wasn't actually reading. I turned off the alarm, kept staring at numbers that meant nothing. At noon, the second alarm sounded. I was in the shower, letting water that cost more per gallon than most people's lunch wash over me. I turned off the alarm with wet hands, watched water circle the drain. At 1 p.m., the third alarm rang. I was standing in front of my closet, in a towel, looking at the suit. This was it. The moment of decision. Go or don't go. Be human or be safe. I reached for the suit. Street Mark's Episcopal Church in Palo Alto was exactly the kind of church you'd expect the Chen family to patronize old money architecture with new money maintenance. Stone walls that had stood for a century, stained glass that probably cost more than my first car, parking lot full of Mercedes and BMWs and Teslas driven by people who considered a Tesla the modest choice. I parked 3 blocks away, not because there wasn't parking, there was plenty, but because I needed the walk. Needed the time to remember how to breathe like a normal person instead of someone having a slow-motion panic attack. It was 1:47 p.m., 13 minutes until the service started. I could still leave, could text Maya some excuse about traffic or work or sudden onset plague, could go back to my fortress and my spreadsheets and my carefully constructed life where the past stayed in the past. Instead, I walked toward the church. People were gathered outside, clusters of mourners in expensive black, speaking in those hushed tones reserved for death and libraries. I recognized some of them business associates of Richard's, friends of the family, people who'd been at dinners where I'd been introduced as Rebecca's friend, even after we were engaged. A woman I didn't recognize looked at me, did a double take, whispered something to the man beside her. He turned, looked, whispered to someone else. The ripple effect of recognition spreading through the crowd like a stone dropped in still water. Daniel Morrison, the ex-husband, the failure who became a success, the man who'd been thrown out and came back rich, the story they'd probably been gossiping about all week. I kept walking, head up, shoulders back, every bit the confident CEO who belonged anywhere he chose to be. The church doors were open. Inside, I could see flowers, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, the kind of floral arrangements that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Everything tasteful, everything perfect, everything screaming, successful man had successful death. I stepped inside. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Churches do that, hold the cold like they're preserving it for later. The pews were filling up. I scanned the crowd, looking for Rebecca, not looking for Rebecca, doing both simultaneously in that special kind of cognitive dissonance that comes with seeing your ex-wife at her father's funeral. Then I saw her. Front row, left side. Wearing black that looked painted on, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look older, more refined, more like her mother. She was talking to an older woman, Margaret, her mother, who'd always been kinder to me than Richard, but never kind enough to contradict him. Rebecca looked up. Our eyes met across 50 feet and 5 years, and a chasm of hurt that no amount of time could fully bridge. She stood, started walking toward me. Every instinct screamed, run, get out, preserve yourself. But I'd learned something in 5 years of building an empire. Sometimes you have to stand still and let the moment come to you. Daniel. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough to touch, too far to accidentally. You came. I came. I didn't think you would. I didn't think I would either. Silence. The kind that's full of words neither of us knew how to say. She looked tired. Not just funeral tired. Soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying too much for too long. Thank you, she said finally, for being here. It would have. It means something. That you're here. I'm not here for you. It came out harsher than I intended, or maybe exactly as harsh as I intended. I couldn't tell anymore where my armor ended and my actual feelings began. She flinched. I know. I just thank you anyway. How are you holding up? The question surprised both of us. Civility, normalcy, the social contract of funerals overriding 5 years of silence and hurt. She paused. I don't know. He was difficult, controlling, impossible, but he was my father. And at the end, he was trying to be different, trying to fix things he'd broken. Does that make it harder or easier? I can't figure it out. Both, probably. Yeah. She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Vulnerability without calculation. You look good, successful. Like you've been, thriving. I have been. Good. That's good. You deserve it. An usher approached, whispered something about the service starting soon. Rebecca nodded, turned back to me. Will you sit with the family? Up front? No, Daniel. I'm here to pay respects, Rebecca, not to play family reunion. I'll sit in the back. He'd want you up front. He said so. In his final days, he kept saying, I don't care what he wanted. The words came out cold, final. He spent years making sure I knew what he thought of me. I'm here. That's more than he deserved. Don't ask for more. She nodded, blinked back tears. Okay. Thank you for coming. She walked back to the front pew. I found a seat in the back, far enough away to observe without being observed, or so I thought. The service was exactly what you'd expect, tasteful, dignified. A pastor who'd probably never met Richard Chen, describing him like he was personally acquainted with the man's soul. Hymns sung by people who looked uncomfortable singing. Eulogies from business partners who spoke about his vision and his dedication and his unwavering commitment to excellence. His son David spoke, talked about growing up with a father who demanded perfection and somehow made you want to deliver it, about learning to measure success in achievements rather than happiness, about only recently realizing those might not be the same thing. Then Rebecca stood up. She walked to the pulpit slowly, carrying a piece of paper that shook slightly in her hands. For a moment, she just stood there, looking out at the congregation. Her eyes found mine in the back, held them. My father, she began, voice steady despite the shaking paper, was not an easy man to love. He was exacting, critical. He had standards that could feel impossible to meet. Many of you knew this. Some of you experienced it. Murmurs of recognition, sympathetic nods. But in his final weeks, something changed. He started talking about regrets, about the ways he'd measured people and found them wanting based on the wrong criteria, about how success and worth aren't the same thing. She looked down at her paper, then folded it, put it aside. There's someone here today who my father hurt badly, someone he misjudged completely. Someone who proved every single one of his assumptions wrong by becoming exactly the kind of man my father claimed to respect, hardworking, innovative, successful. But by the time my father realized his mistake, the damage was done. My chest tightened. She was talking about me, in front of everyone. My father's last coherent words were about this person. He said, "Tell him I was wrong. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I finally understand that character isn't built by never falling, it's built by getting back up." Rebecca's voice broke. She paused, collected herself. I don't know if that apology is enough. I don't know if anything is enough when you've hurt someone the way my father hurt this person, the way I hurt this person. But I know that truth matters. And the truth is that my father died ashamed of how he treated someone who deserved better. That has to count for something. Even if it's too late. Even if it changes nothing. She looked directly at me again. I hope it changes something. Then she walked back to her seat. The pastor started talking again. I stopped hearing the words. Just sat there with Rebecca's voice echoing in my head, with the weight of a public apology I'd never asked for, never wanted, didn't know how to hold. After the service, there was a reception at the Chen family home. Of course there was. Death, like everything else in their world, came with catering and a guest list. I should have left, should have done my duty and escaped. But something, masochism, curiosity, the ghost of who I used to be, made me drive to the house I'd been to so many times when I was younger and stupider and in love. The house hadn't changed, still imposing, still beautiful, still the kind of place that made you feel like you should take off your shoes even though you were wearing a $3,000 suit. Inside, people gathered in clusters, eating finger sandwiches and speaking in respectful near whispers. I recognized more faces than I wanted to. Rebecca's Aunt Sophie, who'd always been kind. Her cousin James, who'd asked me once why I didn't just marry someone more on my level. Business associates who'd watched my marriage implode with the fascinated horror of people observing a car crash. I grabbed a glass of something wine, water. I didn't care, and found a corner. Daniel Morrison. A voice behind me. I turned. David Chen, Rebecca's brother, looking older than I remembered. I wasn't sure you'd actually show up. Neither was I. Took guts. He sipped his drink, especially after, well, everything. How are you holding up? Honestly, relieved. Is that terrible? He was my father, and I loved him. But the last few months watching him die were brutal. Him apologizing for everything, trying to make amends, realizing he'd built his life on the wrong foundation. It was like watching someone have a crisis of faith, except the faith was himself. He called me, I said. Few days before he died. Apologized. Said he was proud of me. David nodded. He talked about you constantly at the end. About how wrong he'd been. About how you were proof that his entire worldview was flawed. I think you haunted him more than he wanted to admit. Good. Is it? David looked at me. Does it feel good? Haunting a dying man? The question landed like a punch. I didn't ask to haunt him. I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted to build a life after your sister destroyed the one we had. Fair enough. He paused. For what it's worth, Rebecca's been miserable. Since the divorce. Since everything. She put on a good face, dated appropriately, successful men, did all the things she was supposed to do. But she's been hollowed out. Like she knows she broke something she can't fix. That's not my problem. No, it's not. I'm just telling you because, I don't know, because someone should, because maybe it matters. Before I could respond, Margaret Chen approached. Rebecca's mother, looking exactly as I remembered, elegant, composed, the kind of woman who could make you feel both welcomed and judged with a single glance. "Daniel, she touched my arm. I'm so glad you came, truly." "Mrs. Chen, I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. And thank you for being gracious enough to come despite everything." She glanced around, lowered her voice. "Richard was very troubled at the end about how he treated you. He knew he'd been cruel. He wanted to make it right. He called me. We spoke. I know. He died more peaceful after that call. Whatever you said to him, however brief, it mattered. So thank you." I didn't tell her I'd hung up on him. Didn't tell her I'd been harsh and unforgiving and exactly as hard as I'd learned to be. Just nodded. Let her believe whatever brought her comfort. She squeezed my arm once more and moved on to other guests. I stood there, drink in hand, surrounded by people who'd watched me fail and rise and fail to become something they understood. Then Rebecca was there, again, like gravity pulling us together despite every reason to orbit separately. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Privately? I don't think that's a good idea. Please, just 5 minutes. There's something I need to tell you, something you deserve to know." I looked at her, saw desperation, saw something else too, something that looked like fear. "5 minutes," I said. She led me through the house to her father's study, the same room where Richard had once explained to me, kindly and condescendingly, why I'd never amount to anything. The same room where I'd sat through countless dinners feeling like an exhibit on display. The inadequate boyfriend. Rebecca closed the door, stood there for a moment, gathering courage, or words, or both. "When I kicked you out," she started, "when I said those things, about you being worthless, about being a mistake, I remember. I didn't mean them." She said it fast, like ripping off a bandage. "I mean, I said them. But I didn't mean them. God, Daniel, I was so angry. At you, at myself, at my father for being right about the business failing, at the universe for making me choose between love and security. And I chose security. I chose wrong. And I've known it every single day since." I said nothing, just let the words sit there, heavy and inadequate. "My father told me to leave you," she continued. "After the business failed, he said you'd drag me down, that I deserved someone who could provide stability. He offered to pay off my student loans if I ended things, offered to buy me a condo, basically paid me to divorce you." The room tilted slightly. "What?" $50,000 to end the marriage, another 50 when the divorce was final. He paid for my apartment for 2 years. She was crying now. "He bought me my freedom from you, and I took it. I took the money, and I said those horrible things to make it easier to leave, and I've hated myself ever since." I couldn't speak, couldn't process. The betrayal I'd thought I understood was deeper, more calculated, more purchased than I'd imagined. "I'm not telling you this for forgiveness," Rebecca said. "I'm telling you because you deserve to know the truth. You deserve to know that it wasn't about you not being enough. It was about me being too weak to choose love over money. Too weak to stand up to my father. Too weak to be the person you thought I was. You took money to leave me, yes. You let me think I failed you, that I wasn't enough, that everything was my fault, yes. And now? What? You confess and expect? What exactly?" "Nothing. I expect nothing. I just wanted you to know the truth, even if it makes you hate me more." I looked at her. This woman I'd loved. This woman who'd destroyed me. This woman who'd apparently been paid to do it. "I don't hate you, Rebecca." She looked up, surprised. "I don't hate you," I repeated. "I don't love you. I don't forgive you. Nothing. I feel nothing for you. And maybe that's worse than hate. Maybe that's what you deserve, to know that you sold something for $100,000 that's now worth nothing at all." I walked to the door. "Daniel, your 5 minutes are up." I left, walked through the house of beautiful things and beautiful people, having a beautiful funeral for a man who died trying to buy his way out of his regrets. I got in my car, drove away, didn't look back. And somewhere between Palo Alto and home, I started laughing. Not happy laughter, not sad laughter. Just the slightly unhinged laughter of someone who'd finally understood the joke. They'd paid her to leave me, and I'd become successful enough that the money looked like pocket change. The universe had a twisted sense of irony. I made it home before the dam broke. That's something, I suppose. Made it through the gate, up the drive, into the house, through the door of my study. Made it all the way to my leather chair Italian, absurdly expensive. The kind of chair that's supposed to make you feel like you've arrived before my hands started shaking. $100,000. That's what I'd been worth. What our marriage had been worth. What 5 years of partnership and promises and shared dreams had been worth to Rebecca Chen when her father opened his checkbook and asked, "What's your price?" I'd always known she'd chosen money over me. That wasn't the revelation. The revelation was that it had been a transaction, not a choice born from desperation or fear or even cruelty, a business deal, negotiated terms, payment on delivery. The laughter from the car had faded. Now there was just the shaking, my hands, then my shoulders, then something deeper, something I'd kept locked down for 5 years, something that felt like it might tear me apart if I let it fully surface. I poured whiskey, drank it, poured more. The burn didn't help, just made the shaking worse, made the edges of everything blur in ways that had nothing to do with alcohol. My phone buzzed. Maya. I stared at it, watching her name flash on the screen. She'd want to know how it went. Want to know if I was okay. Want to perform the sisterly duty of emotional support and validation. I couldn't talk to her, couldn't form words around this thing lodged in my throat that felt like grief and rage and something darker, something that tasted like vindication and ashes. The phone stopped buzzing, started again. Maya, persistent as always. I turned it off. Night fell. I didn't turn on the lights. Just sat there in my expensive chair in my expensive study watching my expensive view fade to black. The valley lights came on like someone was lighting candles for the dead, and maybe they were. Maybe the whole world was a funeral and we were all just pretending otherwise. $100,000. I tried to put it in perspective, tried to do the math. At my current net worth, $100,000 was, what? A rounding error? Less than I'd made in the time it took to attend the funeral? The kind of money I spent on art I didn't look at and wine I barely tasted? But when Rebecca took it, when she let her father slide that check across his desk in this very neighborhood, probably in a room not unlike this one, $100,000 was everything. It was 2 years of her rent. It was freedom from me. It was permission to stop pretending she loved someone her father considered a bad investment. The logical part of my brain, the part that had built an empire, that understood business, that knew how the world actually worked, kept trying to surface, kept trying to say, this changes nothing. You already knew she chose money. You already knew her love was conditional. The price tag doesn't matter. But it did matter, because all this time, I'd carried the weight of not being enough. Not working hard enough, not being ambitious enough, not providing enough security or stability or whatever metric she'd been using to measure my worth. I'd built an empire partly to prove I could have been enough, if only she'd waited, if only she'd believed. Turns out, I could have been Jeff Bezos and it wouldn't have mattered. Her father made an offer, she accepted. End of transaction. I laughed again. That same unhinged sound from the car. It echoed in the dark room, bounced off the walls, came back to me sounding like someone else's breakdown. My phone still off, but visible in the darkness, sat on my desk like an accusation. Maya would be worried by now, would probably call Jennifer, might even call Marcus to check if I'd made it home safely. I should turn it on, should send a text. I'm fine, just processing, talk tomorrow. I didn't turn it on. Instead, I stood up, walked to the window, pressed my forehead against the glass the way I had the night Rebecca first showed up at my gate. The glass was cool, real, solid. Everything else felt like it was dissolving. Somewhere around 2 a.m., I found myself in the kitchen making coffee I wouldn't drink. Muscle memory. The ritual of grinding beans, heating water, The precise measurements I'd learned from YouTube videos during the years when I couldn't afford good coffee but could afford to make bad coffee well. The house was too quiet, too big, too much empty space echoing with too many thoughts. I pulled out my laptop, opened it. The screen's blue light felt violent in the darkness, but I didn't look away. Typed Richard Chen Will into the search bar. Nothing public yet. Too soon. But there would be something eventually. Estate that size, there'd be filings, documentation, probably disputes. Money doesn't die quietly. I wondered if Rebecca knew I'd know. If she'd calculated that telling me about the payoff would somehow make things better or worse. If she thought confession was the same as absolution. My email inbox had 47 new messages. 3 from Maya, escalating in concern. 2 from Jennifer, asking if I needed anything. 1 from my CFO about something that could wait. Dozens more condolences from people who'd read about Richard Chen's death and knew our history. Business contacts checking in. The digital accumulation of a life lived publicly enough that your ex-father-in-law's death becomes networking. I closed the laptop. The coffee maker beeped. I poured a cup, burned my tongue on the first sip because I'd forgotten to wait, forgotten the basic arithmetic of hot liquid plus impatience equals pain. Some lessons you never learn. Wednesday became Thursday became a smear of hours I couldn't track. I called Jennifer at some point morning, maybe, or afternoon, and told her to cancel everything for the week. Personal emergency. She didn't ask questions. Just said, of course, in that competent way that reminded me why I paid her 6 figures. Maya showed up Thursday evening. I watched from the window as her car pulled up the drive, watched her get out and look up at the house like she was calculating which window I might be behind. She had a key. I'd given it to her when I bought the place, some gesture toward family and connection and proving I wasn't completely isolated in my fortress. I heard the front door open, her footsteps in the foyer, her voice calling my name. Danny? I know you're here. Marcus told me you've been home for 2 days straight. I brought Thai food. The good kind. From that place you like. I didn't answer. More footsteps. Closer. She found me in the study, still in my funeral suit, looking like I'd aged a decade in 48 hours. Jesus Christ. She set down the takeout bags, crossed to me, put her hand on my forehead like checking for fever. When did you last eat? I don't know. Sleep? I don't know. Danny. She crouched in front of my chair, forced me to look at her. Talk to me. What happened at the funeral? So I told her. About Rebecca's eulogy. About the private conversation in Richard's study. About the $100,000 and the transaction that had masqueraded as a marriage ending. Maya's face went through several emotions. Shock, rage. Something that looked like she wanted to drive to Palo Alto and commit violence before settling on the careful neutrality of someone trying not to make things worse. That fucking she stopped. Started again. Okay. That's actually worse than I thought. I thought she was just cruel. Turns out she was cruel and mercenary. Yeah. How do you feel? I don't know. That's the problem. I should feel something. Right? Vindicated? Angry? Something? But I just feel empty. Like I've been carrying this weight for 5 years, and it turns out the weight was hollow. Like I built my entire life around proving I was enough for someone who sold me for the price of a decent car. Maya sat back on her heels. You didn't build your life to prove anything to Rebecca. Didn't I? No. You built it to prove something to yourself. Rebecca was just. She was the catalyst. But the empire you built, that's yours. That has nothing to do with her or her father or their blood money. Then why does it feel meaningless right now? Because you're in shock. Because you just found out something that reframes your entire history. Give yourself a minute to process before you decide your life's work is meaningless. She stood up, started opening takeout containers. The smell of pad thai and curry filled the room. My stomach responded before my brain did. Sudden reminder that I was, in fact, still a biological organism with needs. Eat, Maya commanded. Then shower. Then sleep. Then we'll figure out what comes next. What if there's nothing next? What if this is it? The big revelation. The truth that changes everything. And it just doesn't matter? Then it doesn't matter. She handed me a container and fork. But you still have to eat. I ate. Under Maya's supervision, like a child who couldn't be trusted with basic self-care, the food tasted like nothing, but my body appreciated it anyway. Some primitive part of me that didn't care about emotional devastation as long as calories were incoming. Maya didn't try to fill the silence with platitudes. Just sat with me while I ate, occasionally checking her phone, existing in the space without demanding I perform recovery. I thought it would feel better, I said finally. Knowing the truth. I thought truth was supposed to set you free, or whatever. Truth is just information. What you do with it is what matters. What am I supposed to do with this? I don't know. But you have options now you didn't have before. Like what? Like knowing that your failure, the marriage, the divorce, wasn't about you being insufficient. It was about her being bought. That's not the same thing. Doesn't feel different. Not right now. Maybe. But it will. She paused. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you still love her? The question sat there between us, sharp-edged and dangerous. No, I said, and meant it. I don't love her. I don't even hate her anymore. I'm tired of her having real estate in my head. I'm tired of 5 years later still being defined by what she did. I built all of this. I gestured vaguely at the house, the view, the empire beyond the windows, and somehow she's still the protagonist of my story. How do I make her not that? You write a new story, one where she's just a supporting character in someone else's journey. Sounds easy when you say it like that. Nothing about this is easy, Danny, but you've done harder things. You survived the divorce, built a company, buried your ex-father-in-law with dignity. You can survive this too. Maybe, probably. I'd survived everything else, after all. Survival was kind of my thing. Maya stayed until I promised I'd shower and sleep. Made me promise I'd call her in the morning. Made me promise I'd see my therapist, the one I'd been avoiding for 3 months, because everything was fine. After she left, I did shower. Did sleep. But the dreams were vivid and ugly. Full of Rebecca counting money while I drowned. Full of Richard's voice asking, "What's your price?" over and over until the question became meaningless sound. I woke up at 3 a.m., sweat-soaked and gasping, grabbed my phone, turned it on for the first time since the funeral. 83 notifications, most of them noise, but one a text from an unknown number time-stamped at 11 p.m. I know you probably never want to hear from me again. I know I don't deserve your attention or your time, but I need you to understand something. The money my father gave me, I donated it. All of it, 6 months after the divorce, to a scholarship fund for first-generation entrepreneurs. It's called the Morrison Fund. I couldn't keep it, couldn't live with it. This doesn't make anything right, but I needed you to know. I needed you to know that some good came from it, that your name became something that helps people instead of just being a reminder of my worst choice. I don't expect a response. I just needed you to know. Rebecca. I read it 3 times. Googled Morrison Fund Scholarship. It existed, established 3 years ago. 40 students funded so far, full tuition for business school, for entrepreneurs from low-income backgrounds. The website showed photos of smiling students, testimonials about changed lives, opportunities they never thought possible. All funded by the money Rebecca took to leave me. I should have felt something. Gratitude? Anger? The cosmic irony of my name on a scholarship built from the ruins of my marriage? Instead, I felt the same thing I'd felt for days. Nothing. Or not nothing. Something worse than nothing. The hollow recognition that even Rebecca's attempts at redemption were complicated, were inadequate, were too late to change the fundamental equation of what had happened between us. I typed a response. Thank you for telling me. Stared at it. Deleted it. Typed. It doesn't change anything. Deleted that too. Finally settled on. I hope it helps them more than it hurt me. Sent it before I could overthink. 3 dots appeared immediately. She was awake, waiting, hoping for, what? Forgiveness? Conversation? Some sign that her confession had mattered? The dots disappeared. reappeared, disappeared again. Finally, a response. Me too. Nothing else. Just those two words. An agreement. A hope. A ending that wasn't quite an ending. I turned off my phone again. Friday morning, I went to the office. Needed the routine. Needed something that made sense, where the rules were clear and success was measurable, and nobody had paid anyone to betray anyone else. Jennifer looked relieved to see me. Dr. Morrison, welcome back. Are you feeling better? Getting there. Good. Because we have a situation. Of course we did. The world didn't stop spinning just because mine had tilted off its axis. What kind of situation? The Forbes interview. They've been trying to reschedule. They're doing a piece on the new titans of tech, and you're the cover story. But they need to do it this week, or they're moving on to someone else. Let them move on. Sir, I'm not doing press right now, Jen. Tell them I'm dealing with a family emergency. Tell them whatever you need to tell them. She nodded, made a note. There's also the Tech Defend merger finalization. The DoD contracts. The board wants a strategy meeting about expansion into Europe. The list went on. The empire demanded attention. Success required maintenance. You couldn't just build something and walk away. You had to keep feeding it, watering it, making sure it didn't collapse under its own weight. I listened to Jennifer recite my obligations and felt the weight settling back onto my shoulders. The weight of being Dr. Morrison, CEO, titan of industry, man who had it all figured out. The weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to set it down. Schedule the board meeting, I said. Push the merger finalization to next week. Tell the DoD we're on track. And Jen? Yes, sir? Thank you for holding things together while I was not. She smiled. That's what you pay me for, sir. After she left, I sat at my desk, glass and steel, designed to look powerful and feel empowering, and tried to remember why I'd wanted this. The corner office, the empire, the view from the top. 5 years ago, standing in the rain with 2 suitcases, I'd made a promise to myself. Become someone they couldn't dismiss. Build something they couldn't ignore. Prove that their assessment of me was wrong. I'd done all of that. So why did it feel like I'd won a game whose rules had changed while I wasn't looking? My computer pinged. An email from my accountant. Subject line, Morrison Fund, tax documentation. I opened it. Rebecca had listed me as a board advisor for the scholarship fund. Not active, I'd have to approve that, but named. My accountant was asking if I wanted to formalize the relationship, if there were tax implications I should consider, if this was something I was actually involved in, or if it was an error. I stared at the email. Rebecca had put my name on something good, something that helped people, something that turned the worst transaction of my life into opportunities for students who reminded her of me, ambitious, underfunded, trying to build something from nothing. It was manipulation, obviously. A way to tie me to her narrative, to make her redemption arc include me, whether I wanted to be included or not. It was also not entirely unwelcome. I thought about those 40 students, thought about who I'd been at their age, thought about what a scholarship like this could have meant to the kid who worked 2 jobs to put himself through school while dating a girl whose father owned half of Palo Alto. I typed a response to my accountant. Schedule a call. I want to know more about the fund structure. Sent it. Sat there, wondering if I'd just made a decision or just postponed making one. The phone on my desk rang. Marcus. Sir, you have a visitor at the gate. My heart stopped. Not again. Not more of this. Who? She says her name is Dr. Sarah Chen. She's a professor at Stanford. Says she runs the Morrison Fund and needs to speak with you urgently. Not Rebecca. Someone else. Someone from the scholarship. Someone from the thing Rebecca had built with blood money and guilt. Let her in, I said. I'll meet her at the house. Because, apparently, the universe wasn't done with me yet. Apparently, this story had more chapters than I'd planned. Dr. Sarah Chen was not what I expected. I'm not sure what I expected. Exactly. Maybe someone older, someone who looked like they belonged in Rebecca's orbit, polished, wealthy, The kind of person who could navigate scholarship foundations and Stanford politics with equal ease. Instead, the woman standing in my foyer was maybe 35, wearing jeans and a Stanford hoodie that had seen better days, carrying a messenger bag that looked like it had survived multiple academic wars. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she had the slightly frantic energy of someone who'd driven straight from a lecture hall without stopping to prepare. She was also, apparently, no relation to Rebecca's family. Chen is common enough. I'd made an assumption. Dr. Morrison. She stuck out her hand. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. I'm Sarah Chen. I run the Morrison Fund at Stanford. I shook her hand. You're not related to Rebecca Chen? What? No. I mean, there are a lot of Chens in the Bay Area. Should I be? No. Sorry. Long week. Come in. I led her to the study, the same room where I'd spent 2 days unraveling, though I'd cleaned up since Maya's intervention. Coffee instead of whiskey on the desk, curtains open, the appearance of someone who had his life together, if not the reality. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? Coffee would be amazing, actually. I've been teaching since 7 a.m. and I think I'm running on fumes and spite at this point. I smiled, despite myself. She had that academic energy I recognized from my own doctorate days, the perpetual exhaustion worn as a badge of honor, the caffeine dependency treated as a personality trait. I made coffee while she settled into one of the chairs, pulling out a laptop and a folder stuffed with papers. So, I said, handing her a mug, what's the urgent matter? She took a long sip, closed her eyes, like it was the best thing she'd tasted in days. Okay. First, I need to say that I'm sorry for your loss. Rebecca told me about her father. About your complicated history with the family. I debated whether this was appropriate timing, but then I thought, if it were me, I'd want to know. Know what? She opened her folder, pulled out a document. The Morrison Fund is in trouble. Serious trouble. And I think you need to know why before you make any decisions about your involvement. I sat down across from her. What kind of trouble? Financial trouble. Legal trouble. The kind that could shut us down entirely if we don't fix it in the next 60 days. I don't understand. Rebecca established this 3 years ago. How is it already in crisis? Sarah's expression darkened. Because Rebecca established it with dirty money, and someone finally noticed. The room tilted slightly. Explain. The initial funding for the Morrison Fund, the $100,000, came from Richard Chen, but that's not all that went into it. Over the past 3 years, the fund has received additional donations totaling about $1.2 million, most of it from Richard Chen's business associates. Most of it, we're now discovering, from people who were using the fund to launder money or claim fraudulent tax deductions. I set down my coffee. You're telling me the scholarship fund built in my name is a front for financial crimes? Not intentionally. Or at least, I don't think Rebecca knew. But her father's associates saw an opportunity. A feel-good scholarship fund run by a grieving daughter, named after her ex-husband who made good. It's the perfect cover for moving money around. Make a big donation. Get the tax write-off. Look like a philanthropist. Meanwhile, the donation is actually structured in ways that benefit the donor more than the fund. Jesus Christ. It gets worse. Sarah pulled out another document. 2 weeks ago, the IRS flagged us for audit. They're looking at all donations over $50,000. They're questioning the fund's tax-exempt status. And if we lose that status, we have to pay back taxes on all the donations, which we can't afford, which means we shut down, which means 40 students lose their funding mid-semester. I stood up, walked to the window. Outside, my perfectly manicured lawn stretched toward the valley. Everything looked so orderly from up here, so controlled. Why are you telling me this? I asked. I'm not involved with the fund. My name is on it, but I never approved that. I never had any role in this. That's actually the problem. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. You're listed as a board advisor. That was Rebecca's doing. She put your name on the paperwork without your knowledge or consent, which means, legally, you're associated with the fund. If this goes badly, if the IRS decides there was intent to defraud, Your name gets dragged through it. I turned to face her. Are you saying I could be held liable for this? Possibly. Probably not criminally since you can prove you had no active involvement. But civilly? Reputationally, Doctor? Morrison, you're about to be on the cover of Forbes as one of the new titans of tech. If this breaks while you're in the spotlight, it looks like you were either complicit or incompetent. Neither is a good look. The anger that had been simmering since the funeral finally found a target. Rebecca. Even her attempts at redemption were poisoned. Even her good intentions were structured in ways that could hurt me. What do you need from me? Sarah looked surprised. I'm sorry? You came here for a reason beyond warning me. What do you need? She took a breath. I need you to help me save the fund. Not for Rebecca. Not for her father. Or his corrupt associates. For the students. They didn't ask to be pawns in whatever complicated revenge-redemption dynamic you and Rebecca have going on. They're just kids trying to get an education. Smart kids. Hard-working kids. Kids who remind me of... She paused. Kids who remind me of... you, actually. Based on what Rebecca told me about your background. What exactly did Rebecca tell you? That you built a tech company from nothing. That you failed and got back up and succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. That you understand what it's like to be underestimated because you don't have the right connections or the right bank account. Sarah leaned forward. She told me the fund exists because you deserved better than what you got. That if someone had believed in you earlier, given you the resources to succeed the first time, maybe things would have been different. That's a nice story. Very neat. Very redemptive for Rebecca. Maybe, but it's also true, isn't it? You did deserve better. And these students deserve better than to lose their scholarships because some rich assholes used their education as a tax dodge. I sat back down. What would saving the fund require? Sarah opened her laptop, pulled up a spreadsheet. First, we need to clean house. Return every donation we can't verify as legitimate. That's about $800,000. Then we need to restructure the fund with proper oversight, proper accounting, proper everything. Then we need to make up the shortfall so we can keep funding current students while we rebuild. All in 60 days. How much is the shortfall? After returning the questionable donations and accounting for operating costs, about $1.5 million to keep everyone funded through the end of the academic year. Then we need to build an endowment large enough that this never happens again. Ideally, $10 million. I did the math automatically. $11.5 million. Less than the Tech Defend merger had made me in a single afternoon. Pocket change, relatively speaking. But it was the principle. The fact that Rebecca had, once again, created a situation where I had to choose between my own interests and doing the right thing. The fact that even her attempt to do good had turned into a crisis that required my intervention. If I do this, I said slowly, if I clean up this mess, I want full control. Rebecca is out. Her family is out. No more Chen family involvement of any kind. This becomes my fund, run my way, with proper oversight and accountability. Sarah nodded. I was hoping you'd say that. I already drafted new bylaws. You'd be the founding director. I'd continue as executive director if you'll have me. We'd build a real board, people with actual nonprofit experience, no conflicts of interest. Why do you care so much? You could just let it collapse. Find another job. This isn't your mess. She smiled, but it was sad around the edges. I was a Morrison Fellow, first cohort. Rebecca recruited me to run the fund because I knew what it meant. My parents were immigrants. Restaurant workers. I was the first in my family to go to college, let alone graduate school. The Morrison Fund paid for my MBA, got me to Stanford, changed my entire life trajectory. You're one of the 40 students. Number 7, actually, and I've watched 39 others get the same opportunity I got. Watched them transform from kids who thought business school was for other people into confident, capable entrepreneurs. This fund works, Dr. Morrison. The idea behind it is sound. It just needs someone who actually gives a damn to run it properly. I looked at her, really looked at her, saw the passion, the conviction, the belief that education could change lives because it had changed hers. Saw someone who reminded me of me, back when I still believed in things like merit and hard work and the possibility of building something meaningful. I need to think about this, I said. Of course, take the weekend. But Dr. Morrison, we really do need an answer by Monday. The IRS deadline doesn't care about your processing time. She stood, gathered her materials. I walked her to the door. Dr. Chen, she turned. Sarah, please. Sarah, can I ask you something? Did Rebecca know about the dirty money? Sarah's expression was carefully neutral. I don't think so. I think she genuinely wanted to do something good with money that made her feel dirty. I think she was naive about how her father's world worked. But honestly, I don't know. And I'm not sure it matters anymore. What matters is what happens next. After she left, I stood in my foyer for a long time, listening to the silence of my too big house. I called Maya. You're alive, she said by way of greeting. I was about 10 minutes from driving over there again. I'm alive, and I need your lawyer brain. Uh-oh, what happened? I explained. The Morrison Fund, the dirty money, the IRS audit, Sarah's visit, the whole complicated mess. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then, so Rebecca managed to implicate you in potential financial crimes, even while trying to make amends for what she did. That's actually impressive in a terrible way. Can they actually come after me? Legally? Probably not successfully, since you can prove you had no knowledge of or involvement with the fund. But they can definitely make your life miserable during the investigation. And the press would have a field day. Tech Titan linked to scholarship fraud? I can see the headlines now. That's what I thought. So what are you going to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to let it burn. Let Rebecca deal with the consequences of her choices for once. But there are 40 students who didn't choose any of this. Yeah, and one of them is now running the fund and asking you to save it. Yeah, Maya sighed. Danny, I can't tell you what to do here. This is way beyond legal advice. This is about who you want to be. Do you want to be the guy who lets innocent people suffer because your ex-wife screwed up again? Or do you want to be the guy who fixes things even when he didn't break them? Those both sound terrible. Welcome to adulthood. All the choices are terrible. You just pick which terrible you can live with. What would you do? Honestly, I'd save the fund. But I'd make damn sure everyone knew it was you who saved it, not Rebecca. I'd turn this into a story about Daniel Morrison, the philanthropist, not Daniel Morrison, the victim of Rebecca Chen's incompetence. That feels like using the students for PR. No, using the students for PR would be doing it for the headlines. Doing it for them and then letting people know about it? That's just accurate reporting. Plus, it gives you control of the narrative. Right now, Rebecca gets to be the tragic figure trying to make amends. If you take over the fund, you get to be the hero who turned her mess into something functional. I thought about that, about narratives and control, and who gets to tell which stories. I'll think about it, I said. Think fast. You've got until Monday. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I Googled myself. Not the business stuff. I knew what the Forbes profile would say. Knew how the tech press covered my company. I Googled Daniel Morrison Scholarship and Morrison Fund. The results were enlightening. There were articles in the Stanford Daily about the fund's launch, op-eds from grateful students, a whole website with testimonials from Morrison Fellows, their photos smiling from the screen, talking about what the scholarship meant. The Morrison Fund didn't just pay for my education. One student wrote, "It told me that someone believed in people like me, that failure isn't final, that you can lose everything and still build something beautiful." Another, "I used to think business school was for rich kids who already had connections. The Morrison Fund proved me wrong. It changed my life. I read every testimonial, looked at every face, saw echoes of myself in their stories, the first-generation students, the ones who'd worked multiple jobs, the ones who'd failed at their first startup and were trying again. These were my people, or they would have been in another timeline where someone had believed in me the way this fund believed in them. And Rebecca had known that, had understood that these students would resonate with me, would make it impossible to walk away, had built the fund knowing that eventually, somehow, I'd end up involved. Was that manipulation, or was it just understanding? I pulled up Sarah's email, the one she'd sent with her contact information and the draft bylaws for the restructured fund. Read through the bylaws. They were good, thorough, proper governance structure, conflict of interest policies, financial oversight mechanisms, everything the current fund lacked. I opened a new email, typed, "Sarah, I'm in. Let's save the fund, but we do it my way. No half measures. Daniel Morrison." Stared at it for 5 minutes. Deleted it. Typed, "Sarah, I need to sleep on this. Can we meet Monday morning, 8 a.m., at my office? I'll have a decision then." DM. Sent it before I could overthink it. Her response came back in 30 seconds. "I'll be there. And Dr. Morrison, thank you for considering it. These students deserve someone like you in their corner." I closed my laptop, poured a whiskey I actually drank this time, stood at my window watching the valley lights and thinking about the strange mathematics of redemption, how Rebecca's worst choice had funded other people's best chances, how my name had become something that meant hope instead of failure, how the money that had destroyed my marriage was now building other people's futures. The universe had a twisted sense of poetry. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Sarah told me you're meeting with her Monday. Whatever you decide, thank you for hearing her out. The students deserve someone who cares. You always did care more than I gave you credit for. R. Rebecca." Still watching, still orchestrating, still trying to write the ending to a story that I thought had finished 5 years ago in the rain. I typed back, "Stop texting me from different numbers. If I want to talk to you, I'll reach out. Until then, respect my boundaries." Sent it, blocked the number, poured another whiskey, and tried very hard not to think about the fact that despite everything, the betrayal, the payoff, the dirty money, the legal complications, I was probably going to save her fund anyway. Not for her, for 40 students who reminded people of me, for Sarah, who'd pulled herself up and was trying to help others do the same, for the version of myself who'd needed someone to believe in him and never got it. Maybe Maya was right. Maybe strong people feel things and then make decisions anyway. Maybe that's what I'd been doing all along. Or maybe I was just tired of running from anything with Rebecca's fingerprints on it. Monday would tell. Monday morning arrived, dressed in fog, the kind that makes the valley disappear so completely you could almost believe you're the only person left in the world. I stood at my window at 6 a.m., with coffee I'd made too strong, watching nothing, thinking everything. In 2 hours, Sarah would be in my office. In 2 hours, I'd have to decide if I was going to save a scholarship fund built with blood money and good intentions in equal measure. In 2 hours, I'd have to choose between the safety of distance and the risk of involvement. I'd spent the weekend reading, all of it, every Morrison Fellow application, every quarterly report, every thank you letter Sarah had forwarded me. 40 students, 40 stories, 40 versions of the life I could have had if someone had believed in me when it mattered. There was Maria, whose parents ran a food truck in San Jose. She'd built an app that helped small vendors manage inventory and compete with corporate chains. Now, she was getting her MBA, planning to scale it nationally. There was James, who'd grown up in foster care in Oakland. He'd started a nonprofit connecting foster youth with mentors in tech. The Morrison Fund had paid for his business degree. Now he was helping other kids who aged out of the system the way he had. There was Priya, daughter of a single mother who cleaned houses in Palo Alto, probably including Rebecca's parents' house at some point. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd developed sustainable packaging for e-commerce. Her company had just secured Series A funding. 40 stories, each one a variation on the same theme. Smart people who didn't have access, getting access, working harder than they should have to, building something from less than nothing. Succeeding anyway, against odds that shouldn't exist in a country that claims to value merit. I knew these stories. I'd lived a version of this story. The difference was, nobody had funded mine. I'd scraped and borrowed and maxed out credit cards and worked myself to exhaustion, and I'd still failed the first time. Still ended up standing in the rain with 2 suitcases, while the woman I loved chose money over me. These students had gotten a different ending because of the Morrison Fund, because Rebecca had taken dirty money and tried to clean it, because my name, somehow, had become associated with second chances. The question wasn't whether I should save it. I'd known since Sarah left my house that I would. The question was whether I was doing it for the right reasons. Was I doing it for the students? Or was I doing it to prove something to Rebecca? To her dead father? To myself? Maybe the answer was all of the above. Maybe motives didn't have to be pure to produce good outcomes. Maybe I was overthinking this. I finished my coffee, showered, dressed in what Jennifer called my intimidation suit, charcoal Tom Ford, custom fitted, the kind of armor that made boardrooms pay attention. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it as Dr. Daniel Morrison, CEO, not as the heartbroken ex-husband still processing his feelings. Sarah arrived at my office at 7:55 a.m., 5 minutes early, carrying the same battered messenger bag and a travel mug that smelled like it contained something stronger than coffee. "Is that Irish?" I asked, nodding at the mug. She looked slightly guilty. "It's Monday morning, and I'm about to ask a billionaire to fund a scholarship program that might be implicated in financial crimes." I felt like the situation called for reinforcement. "Fair enough. Come in." My office was designed to impress floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking San Francisco. Minimalist furniture that cost more than it looked, abstract art that I'd bought because my decorator said it made a statement. I'd never figured out what statement it was making, but people seemed impressed by it. Sarah wasn't impressed. She looked around like she was calculating square footage and converting it to student scholarships. "You could fit 3 classrooms in here," she said. "Probably. Do you ever think about that? About the waste of space?" "Every day." I gestured to the conference table. "Sit. Let's talk about the fund." She pulled out her laptop, but I raised a hand. "Before you start with the presentation I'm sure you prepared, let me ask you something. Why do you care so much? I know you were a Morrison Fellow. I know the fund helped you. But you could walk away from this, find another job, let the fund collapse and tell yourself you tried. Why are you fighting so hard to save it?" Sarah closed her laptop, looked at me directly. "Because I know what it's like to be told you're not good enough, to have every door slam in your face because you don't have the right last name or the right connections or the right bank account, and I know what it's like when one door opens anyway. When someone takes a chance on you for no reason except that they believe in potential over pedigree. The Morrison Fund did that for you. Yes. And before that, a high school teacher did it for me. And before that, a librarian who let me stay after closing because she knew my house was chaotic and I needed somewhere quiet to study. People who didn't have to care, but did anyway. That's what the Morrison Fund is. It's the institutional version of caring when you don't have to." She paused, gathering thoughts. "I've spent my career in academia, watching rich kids coast through on their parents' donations, while brilliant kids from difficult backgrounds struggle for every opportunity. The Morrison Fund inverts that. It says, we're betting on the kids who had to fight for everything. And those kids, they don't waste the opportunity. They transform it into something bigger than themselves, like you're trying to do now. Like I'm trying to do now," she smiled. "So, yeah, I could walk away, but then I'd just be another person who let a good thing die because saving it was hard, and I've never been good at taking the easy way out." I nodded, understood, recognized the same stubborn refusal to quit that had gotten me through business school and divorce and building a company from the ashes of failure. "Okay," I said, "here's what's going to happen. I'm going to save the fund, but not as a passive donor. I'm taking it over completely. New board, new bylaws, new everything. Rebecca is out. Her family is out. Anyone associated with her father's business dealings is out. This becomes a clean operation with proper oversight and zero tolerance for anything that even smells like financial impropriety. Sarah's face lit up. You're serious? Completely. I'll fund the immediate shortfall, $1.5 million, to keep current students enrolled. Then I'll establish a $25 million endowment, properly managed, so this never happens again. But I want complete control. You'll stay on as executive director if you want the job, but you report to me. The board I'm assembling will include people I trust, my CFO, a nonprofit law specialist, an ethics officer, real governance, not window dressing. When you say $25 million endowment, I mean $25 million. The $10 million you suggested isn't enough. If we're doing this, we do it right. We scale it. Increase the number of fellows from 40 to 100 within 3 years. Expand beyond Stanford to other schools. Create programming for entrepreneurship support, not just tuition funding. Build something sustainable that outlives all of us. Sarah was staring at me like I'd just offered her the moon. Dr. Morrison, that's incredible. But why? Why that much? Why expand it? I stood up, walked to the window. The fog was lifting. San Francisco was emerging from the gray like a promise being kept. Because Rebecca was right about one thing, I said. These students are who I was, who I would have been if someone had invested in me early. And I don't want them to have to fail and suffer and rebuild themselves the way I did. I want them to get it right the first time. I want them to have the resources to succeed without destroying themselves in the process. That's really generous. It's not generosity, it's investment. These students will build companies, create jobs, develop technologies, solve problems. They'll generate more value than $25 million many times over. I'm just accelerating their timeline. I turned back to face her. Plus, there's something poetic about taking money I made, proving Rebecca wrong, and using it to fund opportunities for people she'd never have noticed. Her father thought I'd never amount to anything. Now my nothing is funding the next generation of entrepreneurs. The symmetry appeals to me. Sarah smiled. You know, when Rebecca talked about you, she said you were the kind of person who could hold a grudge and a vision simultaneously. I see what she meant. Rebecca talked about me? A lot, actually. She was haunted by you, by what she'd done. She built this fund because she couldn't fix what she'd broken with you, so she tried to fix it for people like you instead. Sarah paused. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but she used to come to the fellow orientation sessions, sit in the back, listen to the students tell their stories. I'd see her crying sometimes, like she was grieving something she'd killed herself. I didn't want to feel sympathy for Rebecca. Didn't want to imagine her sitting alone in the back of a room full of students who reminded her of me, confronting the magnitude of what she'd chosen when she took her father's money. But I felt it anyway. Just a flicker. Just enough to remember that she'd been human once, before she became the villain of my origin story. That doesn't change anything, I said. I know. I just thought you should know. The fund wasn't just about redemption. It was about penance. Well, the penance is over. This is my fund now, and it's going to be about opportunity, not guilt. We spent the next 3 hours going through everything. Sarah had prepared well-detailed budgets, student outcomes data, expansion proposals, governance structures. She'd thought through every angle, anticipated every question. By 11 a.m., we had a plan. By noon, I'd had my lawyers draft new bylaws. By 1 p.m., I'd transferred $1.5 million to an escrow account to cover immediate funding needs. By 2 p.m., I was on the phone with my CFO explaining why we were suddenly in the scholarship business. Run it by me again, Diane said. You're taking over a financially troubled nonprofit because your ex-wife started it with money her father paid her to divorce you? That's the summary, yes. And you're funding it to the tune of $25 million because 40 students deserve better than to be collateral damage in my complicated history with the Chen family. Diane was quiet for a moment. Then, you know what? Good for you. We've been looking for philanthropic opportunities that align with the company's values. Education and entrepreneurship support fits perfectly. We can even get the company to match some of your personal contribution, make it a corporate initiative. I don't want this to be about the company. Why not? You built this company to prove you could succeed. Now use it to help other people succeed. That's not exploitation, Daniel. That's leverage." She was right. I knew she was right. But something about corporate branding on the Morrison Fund felt like it was diluting the personal nature of what I was trying to do. "Let me think about it," I said. "Think fast. The PR value alone is worth millions. Tech Titan saves troubled scholarship fund he never knew existed. The story writes itself." After I hung up, I sat there thinking about narratives again, about who got to tell which stories and why. Rebecca had created a narrative where she was the repentant ex-wife trying to make amends. I could create a counter-narrative where I was the generous philanthropist rising above personal pain to help students. Both could be true. Both could be strategic. The question was whether I cared about strategy anymore, or if I was tired of every good deed being calculated for maximum effect. Jennifer knocked on my door. "Dr. Morrison, you have a visitor. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent." My stomach dropped. "Is it Rebecca Chen?" "No, sir. It's Margaret Chen, Rebecca's mother." Margaret Chen looked older than I remembered. Still elegant, that was genetic, apparently, but worn in ways that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with grief. She was wearing black, still in mourning, and she carried herself with the careful dignity of someone trying very hard not to fall apart in public. "Mrs. Chen," I said, standing, "I'm surprised to see you." "I'm surprised to be here." She looked around my office the way Sarah had, but her calculation was different. Not about waste, about distance, about how far I'd climbed from the man her husband had dismissed. "You've done well for yourself, Daniel. Thank you. Richard was wrong about you. I told him that, many times. He wouldn't listen. He was." She paused, searching for words. "He was a difficult man to convince once he'd made up his mind. I remember." "I'm sure you do." She sat down without being invited, and I recognized the move. This was a woman who'd grown up with power and knew how to claim space. "I'm here about the Morrison Fund." "What about it?" "I know Sarah Chen came to see you. I know about the IRS audit. I know about the questionable donations from Richard's associates." She looked at me directly. "And I know you're considering taking over the fund. I'm here to ask you not to." That wasn't what I expected. "Why?" "Because it's Rebecca's last connection to you. It's the only thing she has left that means something. If you take it from her, if you erase her from it completely, I'm afraid of what that will do to her." "With all due respect, Mrs. Chen, I don't care what it does to her. She made her choices. She took your husband's money and destroyed our marriage. I don't owe her anything." "No, you don't." Margaret's voice was soft but firm. "But she's my daughter, and she's drowning. She has been since the divorce. And the fund has been the only thing keeping her afloat. The belief that she could do something good with the money that bought her freedom from you. If you take that away, then she'll have to find something else to keep her afloat. That's not my responsibility. I know it's not. I'm not asking you to take responsibility for her. I'm asking you to have mercy." The word hung in the air. Mercy. Such a simple concept. Such an impossible request. Did she have mercy on me? Did she have mercy on me? I asked quietly. When she took the money? When she stood in the doorway and called me worthless? When she let me think for 5 years that I'd failed her instead of telling me she'd been bought? No, she didn't. She was cruel and selfish and weak. Margaret's eyes were wet now. But she's my daughter, and I'm her mother, and I'm asking you, please, to show her a kindness she never showed you. I looked at this woman who'd watched her husband pay her daughter to divorce me, who'd stood by while her family dismantled my life, who was now in my office asking me to spare her daughter pain. Part of me wanted to say yes, wanted to be the bigger person, wanted to prove I was capable of mercy even when it wasn't deserved. But a larger part, the part that had built an empire from spite and survival, couldn't do it. Mrs. Chen, I said, I appreciate you coming here. I appreciate your honesty. But the answer is no. I'm taking over the fund. Not to hurt Rebecca, not even to spite her, but because 40 students need it to be run properly, and it can't be run properly while it's tangled up in your family's guilt and my history with your daughter. This is about them now, not us. Margaret stood slowly. I understand. I don't like it, but I understand it. She walked to the door, then turned back. For what it's worth, Daniel, I'm sorry. For how Richard treated you. For how we all treated you. You deserved better. Yes, I said. I did. After she left, I sat at my desk for a long time, feeling the weight of what I'd just done. I'd said no to mercy, had chosen principle over compassion, had decided that doing the right thing for 40 students mattered more than sparing Rebecca pain. It should have felt like strength. Instead, it just felt like another version of loneliness. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Just heard from the IRS. They're willing to settle if we restructure and return the questionable funds. Your takeover might have just saved us. Thank you. I texted back. We're not saved yet, but we're getting there. Meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. with lawyers. Bring coffee, the real kind. She sent back a smiley face emoji, and I realized it was the first time anyone had sent me an emoji in months, maybe years. My life had become so professional, so carefully curated, that even my text messages were corporate. I forwarded Sarah's message to Maya with a note. Made the decision. Taking over the fund. Rebecca's mother just asked me not to. I said no. Am I a terrible person? Maya's response was instant. You're a person who's allowed to prioritize other people's needs over your ex-wife's feelings. That's called boundaries, not cruelty. Proud of you. I stared at her text. Proud of you. 3 words that shouldn't have meant so much, but did. I stood up, walked to my window, looked out at the city I'd conquered and the empire I'd built and the life I'd constructed from the ruins of the one that imploded. And for the first time in a week, maybe in 5 years, I felt like I was moving forward instead of just running from the past. The Morrison Fund would survive. It would thrive. It would help students who needed it. And my name would mean something other than failure and heartbreak, and the man, Rebecca Chen's father, paid her to leave. That had to count for something. That had to be enough. The restructuring of the Morrison Fund took 3 weeks of lawyers, accountants, and meetings that made my regular board sessions look like casual coffee chats. We returned $847,000 in questionable donations, established a new board with actual nonprofit expertise, implemented financial controls that would make the IRS weep with joy, created transparency protocols that bordered on obsessive. Sarah worked 18-hour days, fueled by Irish coffee, and what I suspected was pure spite directed at anyone who'd tried to corrupt her fund. We made a good team, her passion for the students, my resources, and structural thinking, both of us too stubborn to let this thing fail. By the 3rd week of October, we had a plan. By the 4th week, we had IRS provisional approval pending final audit. By November 1st, we were ready to relaunch. That's when Sarah suggested something that made me want to fire her on the spot. I think you should meet the fellows, she said. We were in my office going over the relaunch announcement. All of them, in person. Why? Because right now, you're an abstract concept to them, a name on their scholarship checks, a mythical figure who swooped in and saved their funding. They should know who you actually are. They know who I am. Forbes did a profile. They know Dr. Daniel Morrison, tech CEO. They don't know Daniel Morrison, the person who understands exactly what they're going through because he lived it. She leaned forward. These students are scared, Daniel. They've spent a month not knowing if their funding would disappear. Not knowing if they'd have to drop out, go back to working 3 jobs, give up on their dreams. They need to see that the person who saved them is real, that he cares, that this isn't just another rich guy's tax write-off. It's not a tax write-off. I know that. You know that. But they don't know that. All they know is that some billionaire they've never met decided their education mattered. Give them a chance to thank you, to connect the dots between the Morrison they've been reading about and the fund that bears your name. I wanted to say no. Meeting the students meant making this personal in ways I'd been carefully avoiding. It meant facing 40 people who represented alternate versions of myself, the ones who got help, who didn't have to fail first, who had someone believe in them early enough to make a difference. It meant admitting that this wasn't just about good governance and proper nonprofit management. It was about something messier, something more human. "Fine," I said. "1 meeting, 2 hours, max. Then I'm done with a personal touch." Sarah smiled like she'd won something. "I'll set it up for next Friday. Evening reception at the Stanford Alumni Center. Casual, just you and the fellows. No press, no parents, no administrators. Just an honest conversation." "I'm going to regret this." "Probably. But you'll regret not doing it more." The week leading up to the reception, I tried not to think about it, focused on work. The Tech Defend merger was finalizing. We'd just landed a contract with the NSA worth $50 million. The Forbes profile had come out, and the phone hadn't stopped ringing with interview requests, partnership proposals, people wanting pieces of whatever magic had made me successful. I ignored most of it. Let Jennifer handle the noise while I tried to prepare for a conversation with 40 strangers who somehow knew my story better than I wanted them to. Maya called on Thursday night. "Nervous about tomorrow." "How did you know about tomorrow?" "Sarah emailed me, asked if I thought you'd actually show up, or if she needed a backup plan." "I'm showing up." "Good, because I told her you would. That you're many things, stubborn, occasionally vindictive, emotionally constipated, but you're not a coward." "Thanks for the character reference." "Anytime." "So what are you going to say to them?" "I don't know. Congratulations on your scholarship. Sorry it came from my ex-wife's guilt money. Good luck with your futures." Maybe lead with something more inspiring than that. "I'm not good at inspiring, Maya. I'm good at building things and being angry at appropriate targets." "Then tell them that. Tell them the truth. That you failed, and it sucked, and you rebuilt anyway. That success isn't about never falling down, it's about getting back up. That they're getting a chance you didn't get, and you're giving it to them because you remember what it's like to need it." That sounds like a TED Talk. It sounds like honesty. Try it. You might be surprised how good you are at it. After we hung up, I sat at my desk trying to figure out what honesty looked like in this context. The truth was complicated. The truth was that I was funding these students partly because they deserved it, and partly because it felt like retroactive revenge against Rebecca's father. The truth was that every time I signed a check for the Morrison Fund, I felt a complicated mix of generosity and spite that probably wasn't healthy. The truth was that I still didn't know if I was doing this for the right reasons, and I was tired of trying to figure it out. Maybe Maya was right. Maybe I should just tell them that. The Stanford Alumni Center was nicer than I expected. Warm lighting, comfortable furniture, food that looked catered rather than institutional. Sarah had clearly put thought into making this feel welcoming rather than formal. I arrived 15 minutes early because punctuality is one of those business school habits I couldn't break. Sarah was already there, wearing something that looked like she'd made an effort. Actual pants instead of jeans. A blazer over her Stanford hoodie, like she couldn't quite commit to full professionalism. "You came," she said, looking genuinely relieved. I said I would. "People say a lot of things. Showing up is different." She gestured around the room. "The fellows are arriving at 6:30. I told them to come, ready to ask questions, share their stories, whatever feels right. This is their event as much as yours. No pressure then. You'll be fine. Just be yourself." People keep saying that like it's good advice. At 6:30, they started arriving. In pairs and small groups, nervous energy and excited chatter. All of them younger than I expected. Early 20s, mostly. A few older students who'd gone back to school after working, who had that particular edge that comes from knowing what failure costs. By 6:45, the room was full. 40 students who'd never met me but somehow knew my story. 40 faces looking at me with something that looked like hope, mixed with curiosity, mixed with the wariness of people who'd learned not to trust things that seemed too good to be true. Sarah called the room to attention. "Everyone, thank you for coming. As you know, the Morrison Fund has undergone some significant changes in the past month. We've restructured, reorganized, and most importantly, we've secured our future. And the person responsible for that is here tonight. Dr. Daniel Morrison, please. Applause. Genuine, enthusiastic applause that made my chest tight. I stood up, walked to the front of the room, and looked at 40 versions of myself looking back. "Hi," I said. Smooth start, very inspiring. A few laughs, the nervous kind that said they were as uncomfortable as I was. "I'm not good at speeches," I continued. "I'm good at building companies and holding grudges and drinking expensive whiskey while pretending I have my life together. But Sarah told me I should come here and talk to you, so here I am." More laughs. More genuine this time. Most of you know the basic story. I started a company. It failed. My marriage ended badly. I started another company. It succeeded. Now I'm standing here funding a scholarship program that bears my name, but wasn't actually my idea. I paused. The thing nobody tells you about success is that it doesn't erase the failure. It doesn't make the hard parts stop hurting. It just gives you better resources for processing the pain. The room was quiet now, listening. I didn't have a Morrison fund when I was your age. I had student loans and credit card debt, and a wife whose father thought I'd never amount to anything. I had failure and humiliation and the kind of poverty that makes you calculate whether you can afford both dinner and bus fare. And when my first company collapsed, when everything fell apart, I didn't have anyone offering to help me rebuild. I had to do it alone. I looked at their faces, saw recognition, saw people who understood exactly what I was describing. You're getting something I didn't get, a safety net, resources, someone believing in you before you've proven yourself. And I need you to understand something. This isn't charity. This isn't some rich guy feeling guilty. This is an investment. I'm investing in you because I know what you're capable of, because I know what it takes to build something from nothing, because I see myself in every one of your applications. I walked to the center of the room. So here's what I need from you. Don't waste this. Don't take this opportunity and squander it because you think someone will always catch you. Work like you're still on your own. Build like failure is still possible. And when you succeed, not if, when, remember this feeling. Remember what it was like to get a chance when you needed one. Then give someone else that same chance. Silence. Then one person started clapping. Then another. Then the whole room was applauding, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years, like I'd said exactly the right thing at exactly the right time. After the formal part ended, the fellows mobbed me, not aggressively, but with the enthusiasm of people who'd been told they could ask questions and had been preparing them for weeks. Maria, the food truck daughter with the inventory app, asked about scaling businesses without venture capital. James, the foster care kid, wanted to know how I'd rebuilt after failure. Priya asked about sustainable business models in a growth-obsessed industry. I answered honestly, told them about the mistakes I'd made, the lessons I'd learned, the things I'd do differently if I could go back. Told them that success was mostly stubbornness and timing and being too dumb to quit when quitting made sense. They listened like I was revealing secrets instead of just describing my life. Around 8 p.m., a young woman approached me. She'd been hanging back, watching, and there was something familiar about her posture. The way she held herself, like she was taking up too much space and trying to minimize it. "Dr. Morrison, I'm Teresa Yang, Morrison Fellow, Class of 2024. Nice to meet you, Teresa. I wanted to thank you, specifically, because..." She paused, gathering courage. I almost dropped out. When the fund looked like it might collapse, when we heard about the IRS audit, I was ready to leave. Go back to my parents' restaurant, forget about business school, accept that this was as far as I was going to get. And then, you stepped in. Sarah did most of the work, but you provided the resources, the vision, the belief that we were worth saving. She looked at me directly. My parents are immigrants. They work 16-hour days running a restaurant in Fremont. They've never had someone with money and power tell them they matter. And watching you do this, watching you take over the fund and fight for it, it taught me something. What's that? That successful people aren't different species. You're just someone who didn't quit. And if you didn't quit, maybe I don't have to either. The simplicity of it hit me harder than it should have. This is what the fund meant. Not abstract notions of opportunity or social mobility, but Teresa Yang standing in front of me, choosing not to quit because I'd shown her it was possible not to. "You're right," I said. "I didn't quit, even when I should have, even when it would have been easier. And you know what? Sometimes I regret that. Sometimes I think about how much simpler my life would be if I'd just accepted failure and moved on. But then I think about all the things I'd have missed, all the people I'd never have met, all the problems I'd never have solved. Do you think it was worth it? All the struggle?" I thought about that. Really thought about it. Ask me again in 20 years. Right now, I'm still figuring it out. She smiled. That's the most honest answer anyone's given me in months. By 9 p.m., the reception was winding down. Students were leaving in clusters, energized and hopeful in ways that made the past month of legal restructuring and financial headaches feel worthwhile. Sarah found me standing by the windows, watching them go. "You did good," she said. "I just talked. You connected. You gave them something more valuable than money. You gave them permission to be imperfect and still succeed. That's what they needed. I'm not sure I succeeded. I just survived. To them, that's the same thing." She paused. "So, was it as terrible as you thought it would be?" "Worse. I actually liked it. Now you're going to make me do this regularly." "Maybe. Would that be so bad?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. My stomach dropped. I'd blocked Rebecca multiple times, but she kept finding new ways to reach me. I opened it anyway. "I heard about the reception tonight, about what you said to the students. James sent me a voice message. He was so excited he could barely speak coherently. Thank you for giving them what I couldn't give you. Every 32 five-parted it." I stared at the message. Rebecca was still watching, still monitoring, still finding ways to insert herself into the narrative. I should have been angry. Should have blocked this number too. Should have maintained the boundaries I'd established. Instead, I just felt tired. I typed back, "This isn't about you. It never was." Sent it. Blocked the number. Sarah was watching me. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just Rebecca being Rebecca." "She texted you?" "She's been texting me from different numbers since her father died. Apologizing, explaining, trying to be part of this story somehow." "What do you say back?" "Usually nothing. Tonight I told her this isn't about her." I looked at Sarah. "Is that cruel? She started the fund. She's the reason any of this exists, and I'm erasing her from it completely." Sarah considered this. "I don't think you're erasing her. I think you're transforming what she built from an act of penance into an act of purpose. That's not cruel. That's evolution. You're very diplomatic." "I'm very self-interested. I want this fund to succeed, which means I need you to stay involved and not get lost in guilt about your ex-wife's feelings." "Fair enough." We stood there for a moment, watching the last few students leave, listening to their laughter echo in the emptying room. "Can I ask you something personal?" Sarah said. "You can ask. Do you ever wish you could go back to before the business failed, before Rebecca left, before any of this happened, just to see if you could do it differently?" I thought about 26-year-old me. Naive, optimistic, still believing that love and effort were enough. That version of myself felt like a stranger now, someone I'd known once but barely recognized. "No," I said finally. "That version of me was good at loving people and terrible at protecting himself. I don't want to be him again, even if it meant avoiding the pain." "You don't miss who you were?" "I miss feeling things that deeply. I miss believing in people that completely. But I don't miss the fragility, the way I'd shatter when things went wrong. The current version of me is harder, lonelier, probably, but harder to break. Is that better? I don't know. It's just different. And different is all I've got." Sarah nodded, like that made sense. Like she understood the trade-offs we make between vulnerability and self-protection. "For what it's worth," she said, "the students tonight saw someone who's both. Hard enough to rebuild after devastation, soft enough to care about kids he's never met. That's a pretty good combination. You're very good at making me feel less terrible about myself. That's why you pay me the big bucks. I pay you a Stanford professor's salary. It's not that big. We should talk about that. I laughed. Actually laughed. It felt strange and good and like maybe I was capable of lightness even after everything. Monday, I said. We'll talk about your compensation structure Monday. I'm holding you to that. She left, and I stayed a few more minutes in the empty alumni center, thinking about Teresa Yang and Maria and James and the 37 other students whose names I now knew, whose stories I'd started to care about despite my best efforts not to. The Morrison Fund had been Rebecca's penance project. Now it was becoming mine. Not penance, something else, something that felt almost like purpose. I drove home through the November darkness, past houses with lit windows and lives I'd never know, and felt something I hadn't felt since before the divorce. Like maybe I was building towards something instead of just running from everything. Like maybe that was enough. December arrived with rain. Not the gentle California mist that apologizes for existing, but the kind of rain that meant business, heavy, cold, relentless. The kind of rain that reminded me of standing on a sidewalk 5 years ago with 2 suitcases and a shattered life, watching Rebecca close the door on our marriage. I was in my study when Maya called. It was 7 p.m. on a Friday, which meant she was calling from home, which meant this wasn't casual. Danny, I need you to not react badly to what I'm about to tell you. My hand tightened on the whiskey glass. That's a terrible way to start a conversation. Rebecca is in the hospital. The room tilted, just slightly, just enough to remind me that despite everything, the anger, the boundaries, the careful distance I'd constructed her name, still had power. What happened? Car accident. She's stable, but it's serious. Broken ribs, collapsed lung, concussion. She's going to be okay, but she's going to be in the hospital for a while. Why are you telling me this? Because Margaret called me. She's asking if you'll come see Rebecca. She's asking, and I quote, if Daniel has any mercy left in his heart. Jesus Christ. I set down my glass before I threw it. Her mother is really going with a mercy angle again? Danny? No, absolutely not. I'm not doing this. Rebecca made her choices. She chose money over me. She built a scholarship fund with blood money. She kept trying to insert herself into my life after I made it clear I wanted nothing to do with her. I don't owe her a hospital visit just because she got into a car accident. I agree. That stopped me. You do? Yes. You don't owe her anything, but that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because I know you, and I know that if Rebecca dies or ends up permanently disabled and you didn't at least check on her, you're going to carry that, not because you still love her, but because you're fundamentally decent in ways that make your life harder than it needs to be. I'm not decent. I'm angry. You can be both. Look, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you the situation so you can make an informed choice. If you want to go see her, I'll go with you. If you don't, I'll tell Margaret you said no, and she can deal with it. But whatever you decide it for the right reasons. After we hung up, I sat there listening to the rain hammer against the windows. The valley was invisible tonight, swallowed by darkness and weather. My own reflection stared back at me from the glass, a man in an expensive sweater, in an expensive house, holding an expensive drink, trying to decide if he was going to visit his ex-wife in the hospital. This shouldn't be a difficult decision. This should be easy. She wasn't my wife anymore, wasn't my responsibility, wasn't anything to me except a chapter I'd closed and tried to forget. But Maya was right. If something happened to Rebecca and I'd refused to even check on her, I'd carry that. Not guilt, exactly. Just the weight of knowing I'd chosen cruelty over kindness at a moment when kindness cost nothing. I picked up my phone, called Sarah. Dr. Morrison? Everything okay? Rebecca Chen was in a car accident. She's in the hospital. I'm thinking about going to see her, and I need you to tell me if that's a terrible idea. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Why are you asking me? Because you knew her. You worked with her on the fund. You saw sides of her I didn't see. I need to know if she's manipulative enough to have staged this for sympathy. Jesus, Daniel. No. Rebecca has a lot of flaws, but faking a car accident isn't her style. If she's in the hospital, it's real. Okay, thanks. Are you actually going to see her? I don't know. Probably. Maybe. I'm still deciding. Want some unsolicited advice? Sure. Go see her. Not for her sake. For yours. You've spent 5 years being angry, and it's served you well. It's made you successful. But at some point, you have to decide if you want to keep being angry or if you want to be free. Sometimes the only way to freedom is through forgiveness, even if the person doesn't deserve it. That sounds like a therapy session. I have a very good therapist. She says wise things and I repeat them at appropriate moments. Sarah paused. Look, I don't know what you should do, but I know that holding on to anger is exhausting. And you seem tired, Daniel. Really tired. Maybe seeing Rebecca, making peace with whatever happened, would let you finally rest. After we hung up, I stood at my window for a long time, watching rain distort the lights below into watercolor smears. Then I grabbed my keys and drove to the hospital before I could talk myself out of it. Stanford Hospital at night had that particular fluorescent despair that all hospitals have, too bright, too clean, smelling like antiseptic and concealed suffering. I walked through the lobby feeling like an imposter, like someone who didn't belong in this narrative anymore. Margaret Chen was in the waiting area outside the ICU. She looked smaller than I remembered, diminished by grief and fear, and the overhead lighting that made everyone look half dead. She stood when she saw me. Daniel, you came. I came. I don't know why, but I'm here. That's enough. Thank you. She gestured to the chairs. Please, sit. We sat. The silence stretched like taffy, uncomfortable, sticky, requiring someone to break it before it snapped. How is she? I asked finally. Stable. The doctors say she'll recover fully, but it'll take time. The car was totaled. She hit a barrier on 101, hydroplaned in the rain. If she'd been going any faster. Margaret's voice broke. I keep thinking about what could have happened. What almost happened. I'm glad she's going to be okay. Are you? Margaret looked at me directly. Or are you just saying that because it's the right thing to say? The question caught me off guard. Most people don't ask for that level of honesty in hospital waiting rooms. Both, I said. I'm glad she's not dead. I'm glad she'll recover. But I'd be lying if I said I felt the way I would have felt 5 years ago. The way I would have felt when she was my wife, and I thought we'd be together forever. Fair enough. Margaret clasped her hands in her lap. She talks about you, you know. Even after the divorce. Even after everything. You're still the person she measures everyone else against. That's not my problem. No, it's not. But it's the truth. Margaret paused. She was driving to your house when the accident happened. My chest tightened. What? She was driving to see you. Had been working up the courage all week. Finally decided tonight was the night she'd show up at your gate again. Ask you to really talk to her, to listen to what she needed to say. She was 2 exits away when the car hydroplaned. I stood up. Margaret, if you're trying to make me feel guilty, I'm not. I'm just telling you what happened. You asked how she is. Part of how she is includes the fact that she was coming to see you when her life almost ended. That feels like information you should have. Why? What am I supposed to do with that information? Feel responsible? Feel like this is somehow my fault for not answering her texts or letting her apologize or whatever she wanted to do tonight? No, I just thought you should know that after 5 years, after everything, you still matter to her, whether you want to matter or not. I sat back down, felt the weight of that settling on my shoulders like wet clothes. Can I see her? She's sedated right now. Might not even know you're there. Still, if I'm here, I should. I don't know. See her. Make sure she's really okay. Margaret stood, led me through the ICU doors, past rooms full of people fighting battles I couldn't imagine, to a room at the end of the hall. Rebecca was unrecognizable at first, tubes and monitors and bandages transforming her into a medical diagram instead of a person. Her face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. Her breathing was mechanical, assisted by machines that beeped steadily like metronomes counting time. I stood in the doorway, not entering, Not quite leaving. You can go in, Margaret said softly. She won't know. But sometimes I think they can feel when someone's there, even when they're under. I walked in slowly, stood by the bed, looked at this woman who'd been my wife, my love, my destroyer, looked at her reduced to vitals and ventilators and the fragility of the human body when physics gets involved. "Hi, Rebecca," I said quietly. Felt stupid talking to an unconscious person. Kept talking anyway. "I'm here. I don't know why. Maya said I'd regret it if I didn't come, and I'm tired of regret. So here I am." The machines beeped. Rebecca didn't respond. I hadn't expected her to. "Sarah says I need to forgive you. Says I'm tired of being angry, and forgiveness is the only way to rest." She's probably right. I am tired. So fucking tired of carrying this around. I pulled up a chair, sat down. "But I don't know how to forgive you. I don't know how to let go of what you did. The money, the lies, the way you made me think I'd failed you when really you'd just sold me." More beeping. More mechanical breathing. "Here's what I do know. I don't want you to die. I don't want you to suffer. I built a good life without you. Better than good, actually. But I didn't build it to hurt you. I built it to prove I could. And I did. So maybe that's enough. Maybe I can stop trying to prove anything and just exist." I stood up, looked at her one more time. "Get better, Rebecca. Not for me. Just get better." I walked out. Margaret was waiting in the hallway. "Thank you for coming. It means more than you know. I didn't do it for you. Or for her. I did it for me. So I wouldn't spend the rest of my life wondering if I should have." Hey. Then it still counts. I drove home through the rain, hands tight on the steering wheel, mind racing through everything that had happened. Rebecca had been driving to see me, had almost died trying to apologize or explain or whatever she thought would make things right. What was I supposed to do with that? My phone rang. Maya. How'd it go? She was unconscious. I sat there for 5 minutes, talking to someone who couldn't hear me, then left. Did it help? I don't know. Maybe. She looked so small, Maya, so broken. And I don't know what I felt. Not love, not hate, just this complicated mess of emotions I don't have names for. That's called being human, Danny. It's exhausting. Yeah, it really is. When I got home, there was a message on my security system. Rebecca had been there earlier, before the accident, before the hospital. She'd driven to my gate, sat there for 20 minutes, according to the timestamp, then driven away. The camera had caught her on video. I pulled it up, watched her sitting in her car, crying, working up the courage to press the intercom button. She never pressed it, just sat there, then drove away, toward the highway, toward the accident. I watched the video 3 times, trying to understand what I was seeing. Rebecca at my gate, unable to press the button, unable to leave, trapped in some liminal space between reaching out and retreating. Just like I'd been trapped for 5 years between moving on and holding on. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I almost didn't open it, almost blocked it automatically. But something made me look. It wasn't from Rebecca. It was from David, her brother. "Daniel, it's David Chen. Mom told me you came to the hospital. Thank you. I know you didn't have to do that. Rebecca is awake now, asking for you. No pressure. Just wanted you to know if you wanted to come back. Room 417. I stared at the text, asking for me. Of course she was. I could ignore it. Could tell myself I'd done my duty by showing up once, that anything more was enabling her need for closure at my expense. Or I could go back. Could have the conversation she'd been trying to have for months. Could maybe, finally, put this whole thing to rest. I looked at the clock. 11 p.m. Visiting hours were over. But I had a feeling the staff would let me through if I asked. Money and success have that effect rules bend for people who look like they don't need to follow them. I grabbed my keys again, drove back to the hospital, told myself I was doing this to end it. To have the final conversation so there wouldn't be any more texts, any more attempts, any more moments of her sitting at my gate unable to press the button. Told myself it wasn't because I cared. I wasn't sure I believed myself. Rebecca was awake when I arrived. Groggy, obviously in pain, but conscious. The breathing tube was gone, replaced with an oxygen cannula. She looked more human now, more like herself. She saw me and tears started immediately. "Daniel, you came back. Your brother texted, said you were asking for me." I am. She winced. "Everything hurts. You were in a car accident. Hurting is pretty standard. Always so literal." A weak smile. "Some things don't change." I pulled up the same chair from earlier. Sat down. "What did you want to say, Rebecca? What was so important you were driving to my house in the rain?" She closed her eyes, gathered strength, or thoughts, or both. "I wanted to tell you the truth, the whole truth, not the version I told you at my father's funeral, the real one." "I'm listening." "When my father offered me the money to leave you, I didn't take it right away. I spent 2 weeks agonizing over it. 2 weeks of him calling every day, asking if I'd made my decision. 2 weeks of looking at you and wondering if love was enough when we couldn't pay rent, when creditors were calling, when you were working yourself to death trying to save a business that was already lost." She opened her eyes, looked at me. "I loved you, Daniel. I really did. But I was scared. Scared of being poor. Scared of disappointing my parents. Scared that if I chose you, we'd both drown. And my father knew exactly which fears to exploit. So you took the money." So I took the money, and I told myself it was the practical choice, the smart choice, that you'd be better off without me anyway. That I was setting you free to succeed without my family's expectations dragging you down. She laughed bitterly. It turned into a cough that made her wince. "Turns out, you succeeded anyway. Succeeded better than you ever would have with me. You don't know that." "Yes, I do. You built your empire on spite and survival. If I'd stayed, you would have been comfortable. You wouldn't have had that fire, that need to prove everyone wrong." She reached for my hand. I let her take it. Didn't know why. "I destroyed you to save myself, and watching you rise from that destruction has been the most painful privilege of my life." I sat there, holding her hand, feeling the weight of 5 years of assumptions shifting. "I don't know what to do with this," I said finally. "I don't know how to process the idea that maybe our divorce was the best thing that ever happened to me." "You don't have to process it. You just have to know it's true. And you have to know that I'm sorry. Not sorry I left. You're better off. But sorry for how I left. For the cruelty. For making you think you were the problem, when really, I was just a coward. You were 26. We both were. That doesn't excuse it. No, but it explains it." I squeezed her hand once, then let go. "I forgive you, Rebecca. Not because you've earned it, not even because you deserve it, but because I'm tired. I'm tired of being angry, tired of carrying this around, tired of every good thing in my life being tainted by what you did to me." She was crying openly now. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. This isn't for you. This is for me, so I can finally move on, so your ghost can stop haunting my success." "I understand." I stood up. "Get better, Rebecca. Build a good life. Find someone who isn't broken by you. And maybe stop texting me from different numbers. It's getting creepy." She laughed through the tears. "Deal." I walked to the door, stopped, turned back. "The Morrison Fund is going to be something special, not because of your guilt or my spite, but because 40 students deserve better than to be pawns in our complicated history. So thank you for starting it. And goodbye." "Goodbye, Daniel." I left, walked through the hospital, through the parking lot, got in my car, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt light. Not happy, not healed, just unburdened. I drove home through the December rain, past my gate, up my drive, into my house that didn't feel quite so empty anymore. Called Maya. "It's done," I said when she answered. "What's done?" All of it. I talked to Rebecca. I forgave her. I let it go. How do you feel? Like I just set down something heavy I've been carrying so long I forgot it wasn't part of my body. That's called closure, Danny. Congratulations. It's about damn time. I laughed. Actually laughed. Yeah, it really is. 6 months later. The intercom crackled at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that felt like any other Tuesday, which is to say, it felt like peace. I was in my study, watching the sunset paint the valley in colors that didn't have names, when Marcus's voice came through with that particular tone reserved for situations he found interesting. "Sir, we have a visitor at the main gate." I smiled, set down my coffee. I'd switched from whiskey to coffee at some point over the winter, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly when. "Who is it?" "A young woman, Teresa Yang. She says she's a Morrison Fellow and has something urgent to discuss with you." Teresa, the restaurant daughter who'd almost quit. I'd seen her twice since the December reception, once at a fund board meeting where she'd presented research on sustainable food supply chains, and once at a coffee shop near Stanford where we'd talked for 2 hours about entrepreneurship and fear and the mathematics of risk. "Let her through," I said. "I'll meet her at the house." I walked downstairs, opened the front door, watched her car make its way up the drive, a beat-up Honda Civic that had seen better days, probably held together by duct tape and determination. I recognized that car. I'd driven versions of it for years. Teresa got out, looking nervous but determined. She was carrying a folder and wearing business casual that suggested she'd come straight from something important. "Dr. Morrison, thank you for seeing me without an appointment. I know it's an imposition." "Come in, Teresa. What's going on?" We settled in the kitchen. I'd learned that the formal study made students nervous. The kitchen, with its coffee maker and normal-sized table, helped level the playing field. "I got funding," she said, words tumbling out in a rush. "For my restaurant technology platform. Real funding. $2 million seed round. Led by a VC firm that specializes in food tech. That's incredible. Congratulations." "Thank you, but that's not why I'm here." She opened the folder, pulled out documents. "I'm here because I want to give back to the Morrison Fund. 10% of my equity. When the company exits, if it exits, the fund gets 10% of whatever I make." I stared at the documents. "Teresa, you don't have to do this. I know I don't have to. I want to. You gave me a chance when I had nothing, when I was ready to quit. This is how I make sure someone else gets the same chance." She pushed the documents across the table. "I talked to Sarah. She said you'd try to refuse. She also said you'd understand why I needed to do it anyway." I picked up the documents, read through them. They were real, legally binding. A gift that could someday be worth millions, or nothing, depending on how her company performed. "This could be a huge mistake," I said. "You could need that equity. You could regret giving it away. Or I could become successful beyond my wildest dreams and be grateful I got to share it with people like me." She smiled. "You taught me that, at the reception. You said to remember what it felt like to get a chance and then give someone else the same chance. I'm just doing what you told me to do." I looked at this 23-year-old woman who'd almost quit, who'd taken a chance on herself, who was now paying it forward before she'd even finished business school. Saw myself, saw what I could have been, with the right support, saw what the Morrison Fund was becoming not just a scholarship program, but a community of people who understood that success without generosity was just accumulation. "Okay," I said, "I'll accept this. On one condition." "What's that?" "You join the Morrison Fund Advisory Board. We're expanding, adding mentorship programming, entrepreneurship support, connections to capital. We need people who've lived it. People who remember what it's like to be where these students are now." Her eyes went wide. "You want me on the board?" "I want you everywhere you're willing to be. Teaching, mentoring, sharing your story, being proof that the fund works." I signed the documents. Deal? Deal. After she left, I stood in my driveway watching her taillights disappear down the hill. The valley was dark now, lights spreading out like a constellation of other people's lives, other people's stories, all of us connected in ways we'd never fully understand. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Teresa just called me screaming about equity donations and board positions. What did you do? I typed back, accepted a gift, offered a position, the usual Tuesday evening activities. You're getting soft in your old age. I'm 32. My point stands. I walked back inside. My house felt different now. Less like a fortress, more like a home. The silence wasn't oppressive anymore. Just quiet. The good kind that came from being at peace instead of hiding from pain. I poured coffee, stood at my window, thought about Rebecca, who was recovering well according to the occasional updates David sent. Thought about her father, who died believing I'd never amount to anything. Thought about the $100,000 that had become a multi-million-dollar fund that was changing lives. The universe had a strange way of turning poison into medicine. My phone rang. Maya. How's my favorite philanthropist? Tired. Happy. Possibly both. Good. That's growth. Listen, I'm having people over for dinner Sunday. Couple friends from work. Tom's sister, her friend who just moved to the Bay Area. Very casual. You should come. Is this a setup? It's dinner. If you happen to meet someone interesting, that's just good hosting. I'll think about it. That's code for yes. See you at 7. She hung up before I could argue. I smiled, set down my phone, looked out at the valley, at the empire I'd built, at the life I'd constructed from spite and survival and stubbornness. It had been enough for a long time, being successful, being vindicated, being the man who'd proved everyone wrong. But maybe it was time for something more than enough. Maybe it was time for whatever came next. The intercom crackled again. Marcus. Sir, someone who claimed to be your wife is at the gate of your estate. For a split second, my chest tightened. Then I heard the smile in Marcus's voice. Sir, I'm kidding. Just testing the security protocols. All quiet here. I laughed. Actually, laughed. Marcus, that's the worst joke you've ever made. My apologies, sir. Thought you could use some levity. I could. Thank you. I turned off the intercom, stood at my window, smiled at my reflection, a man who'd survived devastation, built an empire, learned to forgive, and was finally, slowly, learning to let go. The gate stood empty. The estate was quiet. The past was past. And for the first time in 5 years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was just living. That was more than enough. That was everything.